Landon opens a book that says Klaus Michelson, the Great Evil. Is that an inaccurate thing to write? No. Hi everyone, my name is Caitlin. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be recapping a show that consumed my life for 4 years. And that show is Legacies. If you've never heard of Legacies before, you've probably heard of the parent shows, which are The Vampire Diaries and The Originals, and this is the third show within that universe. And Legacies was one of the last shows on the CW before the network went to shit. First off, who is this video for? Well, if you watched The Vampire Diaries and The Originals and you were a fan, but you didn't get a chance to watch Legacies or you just chose not to, well, one, great decision, and two, you're in the right place. This video is also for if you did watch Legacies, because I'm sure there are so many things that you blocked out of your memory. I sure did. When I was rewatching, I was like, this really happened? I was really eating this up every week? Yes, I was. So I think this will be a nice trip down memory lane. I will be recapping every single thing that happened in the show with my own analysis of the plot points and character choices baked in. There will be a lot of bias and you can definitely tell which characters I do not like, but I just think that makes it more fun. So you may be saying to yourself, what makes me specifically qualified to tell you everything about Legacies? Like I said, this show consumed my life for 4 years and I was like in the Legacies trenches, which is somewhere that shouldn't even exist in the first place, but I was deep in it for 3.5 years, getting trench foot. And like there was no escape in sight. When the final season was airing, I was doing videos on TikTok and I was identifying myself as the resident Legacies expert. I put an episode title on my grad cap and then I showed it on Twitter and then Julie Plex sent me a sweatshirt for free. Like this is how deep I was and this is how serious it was. Also like the shirt I'm wearing right now, it has Salvatore Stallions on it. I literally bought it from one of the actress's sisters. Like she was running a merch store. I do have a button that says, I really wish I never watched Legacies, and I wear it proudly because I feel this way all the time. But then again, if I never watched Legacies, I would never have been able to make this video. So in hindsight, it is like a very weird show to get attached to. I always say that like you don't choose the hyperfixation, it chooses you, and like you have no control over it. If something's gonna make you very happy like every week, you just have to chase the dopamine wherever you can get it. Sometimes I think about it and I'm like, what did I do in a past life to deserve this hyperfixation and just like having to put myself through that? And like I don't know. I think I can like track the trajectory of my obsession because I was like just fresh off The Originals. It was ending. It was like one of my favorite shows ever. And then I was like, oh, they're doing another spinoff, like the same universe, some of the same characters. Like this is gonna be so much fun. And so like I so desperately wanted to like it. I feel like maybe I like Stockholm syndromed myself into liking it as well. I'm not saying I'm proud of the obsession, but like at this point I can't really do anything about it. Like it happened already. So all I'm going to do is laugh, and that's what this is going to be. But I will say, now that it's been like 7 years since the show premiered, I'm not an impressionable and vulnerable age at the age of 16. Now that I'm far removed from the obsession, I can really see it for what it was. I did rewatch the show to make this video, obviously, and some of it was kind of like riding a bike. Like that's my relationship to Legacies, is like it's all buried in there somewhere deep and like it will start to come out. Legacies is the third show within the Vampire Diaries universe, and there is like 13 seasons of other television technically that you need to watch before. You don't have to, but I suggest you do because it is much better than whatever's going on here. I personally think The Originals is a better show than the Vampire Diaries, but people differ on this. If you haven't seen those shows, I will definitely fill you in on the lore as we go, but there is going to be spoilers for those shows, just the warning, even though like these shows are over 10 years old. In The Originals, because Legacies is a spinoff of The Originals, there was a backdoor pilot in The Originals, and that pretty much means like sample for the network to judge whether they want to greenlight Legacies, and like they kind of introduce some characters that would be in the spinoff and trying to get people to get a feel for what it's going to be like. So there is a backdoor pilot. It's the penultimate episode of the series. I'm not going to really summarize it, but I will tell you about the lore when it's necessary because there were a bunch of other things happening in that episode that really has nothing to do with Legacies. I think it's important to note that this show is described as a love letter to Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Harry Potter. I just think it's very important to keep that in mind as we go through this, because you will definitely see the parallels, or in other words, the copy and paste that the Legacies writers did from those inspirations. I do have a sick pointer that I'm going to be using to point to the map just for our keys, right? So we have red lines, which are romances. Blue lines are family, friends, or just any type of interaction that they have with the characters. Because we're dealing with supernatural beings, some characters have symbols. For example, let's take Hope. She has a purple crystal ball, which means she's a witch. She has a white moon, which is a werewolf, and then a red blood drop for vampirism. And so that is sprinkled throughout the web as other people are different species, just so you can keep track. Legacies is one of the most poorly lit and color graded shows on the face of the earth. And so a lot of these pictures are just black or like really dark. So I will put them on the screen like as I talk about it, but like I'll also point. If people are dead, they have red X's on them. As the story progresses, people will die and we'll put some X's on them. So that's kind of like my backstory prologue thing. Before we get into the season 1 stuff, I'm going to do a quick rundown of the main characters just so you kind of have an idea of who we're talking about. Our main character is Hope Michelson. And she is the daughter of Klaus Michelson, who was the main character of the originals and also like a really big villain in the Vampire Diaries. Her mother's Haley Marshall, and they were both hybrids. And this makes Hope a tribrid. So she's all three, like I mentioned, witch, werewolf, and vampire. However, she is not a vampire quite yet. We have to wait for her to die in order to activate that side. But right now she's a werewolf and a witch. She has a lot of power and she is pretty much the big superhero of the show. And she also has a lot of trauma. Abusing both her trauma and her power is the headmaster of the school, Alaric Saltzman, who you may remember from the Vampire Diaries. No, he is not dead. I wish he was. He is a former vampire and also a former vampire hunter, but now he's reformed and has children, and he is the headmaster of a school that he definitely should not be headmaster for, and we will see that later on. Alaric has twin daughters, Josie and Lizzie. They are both witches, and they are siphoner witches, meaning they don't have power of their own and they have to siphon it from other magical things. You can pretty much identify the twins from like one characteristic each. And so Josie up here, she's a pushover. She's codependent, and she lets her sister Lizzie walk all over her. And Lizzie kind of doesn't have the emotional intelligence to realize what she's doing to Josie, and Josie also doesn't have the emotional backbone to stand up to her sister. Lizzie also has an unidentified mental illness that they love to just throw around in the show. She has episodes, still unclear what that is. So those are the women of the show. Then we have Landon Kirby, who was in the backdoor pilot of the originals. He served Hope milkshakes at the grill. They danced together. He was her crush. And so he comes back in this show. If you like him for some reason, don't worry. This show will be all about him, not the actual legacies of the Vampire Diaries universe. It'll all be about this one man. Raphael is Landon's foster brother, and he is a werewolf. That's all you need to know about him. And the last big main character of this show is MG, stands for Milton Greasley. So we just call him MG because he doesn't like the name Milton. He's a vampire and he has a crush on Lizzie and he's a nerd. Those are all the main characters, and then everybody else we'll get to know as the season goes on. This video in particular is only going to cover the first season, season 1. However, if people like this, I will recap the whole show. That's the plan, at least, unless this video epically flops. Just a disclaimer before we start, there are about 5,000 things going on in this show at any given time, in any episode. I did try and kind of group everything together and make it seem as sensible as possible. If it seems disorganized, it's because it's the show. Also, if it seems like I'm repeating the same story beats for characters and relationships, that's also the show. Like, they just really hound it down all of the time. And so yeah, that's everything out of the way. So let's get into episode 1. I just want to say full credit to my forebearers before this. Jenny Nicholson, Mike's Mike, Uncarly. They've all done Unhinged recaps of some sort like this. I'm definitely not the first person to do something like this, and I'm not the last. Let's get into episode 1, called This is the Part Where You Run. All of the episode titles throughout the whole show are quotes from a character within the episode. Some quotes are worse than others. I will say for season 1, it's not as bad. Like, it does get worse in season 2 and season 3. The first episode opens up on the night of a full moon, and the Salvatore boarding school, which is the school that Alaric Saltzman has founded, named after Stefan Salvatore of the Vampire Diaries, they are going to be welcoming a new student tonight. And Hope, our main character, gives a little monologue about heroes and villains and maybe the difference is who's telling the story. So it seems, at least from the pilot episode, the very first episode of the show, that they're interested in exploring this idea of nature versus nurture. And this idea that these kids are supernatural, but they have the potential to use their powers for good or bad. And I'm pointing this out now because I think it's important to kind of note what the theme of the show was originally supposed to be and kind of how far it strays from that. The setup does seem like, yeah, they can do that because they're a supernatural school and they're going to teach these kids how to be good. But it all just ends up becoming like the savior story for Alaric and how like him alone, Alaric Saltzman alone, former vampire hunter, monster hunter, former vampire, is the only person who is capable of reforming these children. And so that's not great. It's the night of the full moon. And we are introduced to foster brothers Landon and Raphael. They live in Atlanta, Georgia, and just for reference, Salvatore Boarding School is in Virginia. Raphael and Landon are going to church because their foster parents, Hector and Maria, want to go see a priest after he threw a lawnmower through the patio doors, and they're all kind of freaked out about that. And so they show up, and it turns out that this like little church meeting with the priest is an exorcism. And so they force Landon to go outside. They lock him out of the church and they start physically restraining Raphael as this priest is like holding up a cross at him, trying to exorcise the demon out of him. But then Hope and Alaric roll up in his Jeep. They get inside, stop the priest, stop the exorcism, and they chain Raphael up and he turns into a big wolf because it is a full moon. In the Vampire Diaries, the lore is on the full moons, the wolves actually turn into wolves and they can't really control when that happens and every bone in their body breaks. It's really horrible. Also, it's important to note that during every single mission, every single fight, Hope Michelson does the brunt of the work. All the time. She's 16 years old. Alaric is just an accessory. After the full moon and Raphael is done wolfing out, they all drive back to the Salvatore boarding school. When they get back to the school, we're introduced to Josie and Lizzie, sisters, twins, fraternal, OVs. So they are Alaric's twin daughters. And the lore here is that they are biologically Joe Laughlin's daughters, who was Alaric's wife, but she tragically died at her wedding. And so their coven magically implanted them into Caroline Forbes, and she carried them to term and gave birth to them. The twins take Raphael on a tour while Alaric and Hope question Landon. The way that werewolves work in the Vampire Diaries is you are born with the werewolf gene, but it remains unactivated unless you kill someone, whether it's an accident or intentional. If you take a human life, your curse will be activated. So now the question is, who did Raphael kill? Landon tells us that Raphael killed his girlfriend Cassie in a car accident. And that was like a couple weeks ago. And so that's why this instance right here was his first werewolf transformation. And that's kind of why he's been angry and throwing lawnmowers. And like, that's why he can do that, because he's a werewolf. The Salvatore boarding school does exist within Mystic Falls. However, the cover is that they are a school for troubled rich kids. And so they keep up this facade so people don't ask questions. And Landon's like, well, why are you guys telling me all of this if I'm just going to leave? You guys can't be that secretive if you're just telling anybody willy-nilly. Well, they plan on compelling this information out of him so he forgets. That's where our vampire MG comes in. In the Vampire Diaries, vampires can compel human beings. And that pretty much involves staring them right in the eye and going, you must do this. MG is like, you're going to forget all of this and go home. And Landon's like, what are you talking about? I'm not going to do that. And so the compulsion doesn't work. And Hope is like, did you mess it up? Like, what just happened? And MG's like, well, no. Compulsion's the easiest trick in the book. I don't know what happened. Because he's resistant and because it didn't work, MG chokes out Landon and puts him in a cell in the basement. So they think the reason he can't be compelled is because of vervain. And vervain is an herb that makes humans immune to compulsion, and the sheriff will put it in the water apparently. So they're like, okay, we'll just wait for it to get out of your system. So Landon is unconscious. So that's a problem. Josie and Lizzie are going on a tour with Raph, and they're kind of going around the school, and we see this like magical rugby, almost like Quidditch. Again, there's the Harry Potter inspiration of it all. Don't get too attached to this because it is never seen again. I don't know why they mention it, because they never do it. One thing I'd like to note is if you see all of these red lines around here, right? These are all romances, and a lot of them are just between our main characters, right? As long as you're not related, they're between the main characters. Legacies has this crazy love hexagon going on between all of the characters. There are a bajillion love triangles. In this first episode, we're introduced that MG has a crush on Lizzie, but Lizzie never looks at him. And right now, Lizzie has the hots for Raph, our new student. And also, Josie likes Raph. But remember, Josie is codependent and a pushover, so she is letting Lizzie have dibs on the new guy, even though they just met him at the same time. And Lizzie, pickup artist of all time, puts her foot in her mouth and says that she's happy he's single. Mind you, his girlfriend's body is barely cold. And then she calls him hot, angry, and damaged. And obviously he doesn't like that. And he's like, I'm gonna get far away from you. So this causes Lizzie to have a crash out in the kitchen where she just magically throws dishes everywhere and breaks everything. Right before Alaric is taken to clean up Lizzie's mess, he is training with Hope. And they kind of have a father figure relationship going on. Mind you, he has 2 daughters right here, but he pays more attention to Hope. This is because both of Hope's parents are dead. Her uncle is dead. And a lot of people say that the Michelson brothers died for this show to happen, which like kind of makes sense because there is no world in which Klaus Michelson is still alive and he sends his daughter to some random ass school. So they needed them to die. Hope is a self-imposed loner because of her abandonment issues and her kind of like PTSD around people that she loves dying. So she kind of gets ahead of it and is like, well, I'm not going to get close to anybody in fear of them like dying on me. So she's kind of preventing herself from doing that. But then that also leads her to be closed off from everybody else. So the relationship between Hope and Alaric does cause some tension between Hope and the twins. They are quite upset that their dad is prioritizing this girl over them. My take on this is blame your dad, not Hope. I don't know why that requires you to hate Hope. Lizzie's moment in the kitchen is one of her episodes. She does some recentering with Alaric to calm her down. Like I said, it's never explicitly stated what kind of mental illness Lizzie has. Alaric does say that her freakouts are genetic. And then Josie doesn't get the freakouts, but she is codependent. And that's the genetic part of that, which, okay, I don't know if that's really how that works. Hope gets permission to wolf out in the woods because Landon being back has caused all sorts of feelings for her. Although it's not a full moon, Hope does have control of when she can shift because her mother, Haley, was in the Crescent Pact, which is a pack in New Orleans that can control their shift. So that's kind of like an ability that she has inherited. So she's outside in the woods, but what she doesn't know is that Josie Saltzman, at the behest of Raphael, has sprung Landon out of his jail in the basement. And so Landon Kirby is running around, trying to leave the school. Well, not like running. He's just like walking. Like he's not really like trying to escape, but he's just like letting Raph be because he sees that Raphael is having fun. And so Wolf Hope actually almost mauls Landon. She's able to turn back very quickly because she has control of her shift. She's naked, takes his jacket, and they go back to the school. At this point, we do learn that Raphael actually likes Josie. And so the feelings are returned. However, Josie hears this and she's like, you should give my sister another chance. Josie Saltzman, if you don't do something for yourself, please. Hope takes Landon back to the library, and Landon is kind of the audience self-insert of kind of this new person introduced into this environment and like getting to know everything. And so she gives us a crash course on the school and like her heritage. Landon opens a book that says Klaus Michelson, the Great Evil. Is that an inaccurate thing to write? No. Obviously, Klaus isn't like Superman or anything. Like, he did drown Tyler Lockwood's mom in a fountain at Christmas and kill many indiscriminately. However, I do think it's unfair to have his daughter go to the school and have to be forced to read bad stuff about her dad. There is this like heavy bias from Alaric, and he loves to tell Hope that she is the daughter of Klaus Michelson and that she's like evil, or she's like prone to evil. Her mother Haley was a werewolf alpha, and both of her parents died to save her, which is true, and that's where all her grief and her trauma comes from. Like I said before, she's a tribrid. She's all 3 species, only one of her kind. It's very, very cool. We find out that Josie has an evil ex named Penelope, and she is nursing a wounded heart, Josie is. And they call Penelope all these evil names, she who shall not be named, the devil, Satan, whatever. And MG is Josie's best friend. And one night she walks in on them in the kitchen, and Penelope has convinced MG to almost drink from her, like from her neck, and then they kiss. And so Josie walks in on her ex and her best friend kissing, and she's pissed. Also, I just want to note that during that scene, You Should See Me in a Crown by Billie Eilish is playing. I think that just represents how Legacies is just a product of its time, of the late 2010s. Hope and Landon are back in Landon's jail cell. They've returned him back, I guess. They kiss. They kiss in the jail cell after he's like, actually, you're quite nice. Landon wasn't doing well in the small space of the jail cell, so Hope did like a Starry Night constellation magical spell so he could feel better. And he was like, oh my God, you're actually really nice. Now it's the next morning, and Landon talks to Alaric, and Landon's like, actually, can I stay? It's like really nice here. And like, I'm a foster kid and like Raphael's my brother and like we're a family and blah, blah, blah. And Alaric's like, no, you can't stay because this school is for supernatural kids and you're not supernatural. They compel him again and he leaves. And so we see Landon walking away from the school down the driveway, and Hope gets a glance of a thing that she will see many a time throughout the series. And that is his back, because he is always leaving. Always. And so here is where I'd like to introduce something I'm going to call the Landon leaving counter. And this is going to be a recurring tally throughout the whole show of every time Landon Kirby leaves Hope Michelson. Let me just tell you, the fact that I'm establishing this means that this happens so many times. We're going to keep a running tally, and now we're at 1. So the episode ends with a big mystery, and that is that a knife that Hope and Landon were looking at, this knife has gone missing. Admittedly, nobody knows what the knife does, but they're like, okay, it's missing from our collection. This is not good. People are like, who did it? Who did it? And Alaric's like, it was Landon. And we know this because like Landon's like the only new person that's been at the school. And we find out that the compulsion didn't take. Again, he didn't go where he was supposed to go. And so that leads Alaric to believe that Landon is supernatural in some way, because the only other way that you can avoid compulsion is if you are another supernatural being. Like vampires can't compel witches and vampires can't compel werewolves. And Hope is besides herself because she has finally let someone in and finally kissed somebody, all for them to betray her. And she's like, well, I'm not stupid. I wouldn't believe someone like that. Well, it happened, Hope. So now Hope is pissed at Landon and she wants to get revenge. In order to find Landon, she enlists the help of one Josie Saltzman to do a black magic spell. And Josie's like, well, they don't let us do black magic here. This is a school, Hope. And Hope's like, well, I just saw you light Penelope Park's hair on fire. So you do partake in black magic. They have this little scene, kindred spirits in revenge, and they locate Landon, and we kind of see like these flashes of the knife and Landon, and he's on a bus, and the knife starts to glow. The episode ends next day. Sheriff Matt Donovan, the human from the Vampire Diaries that refuses to die, he's still alive, and he is the sheriff of the town. He calls Alaric and Hope to the highway where there is a burnt, charred bus. And this is the same bus that Hope saw Landon on in like the black magic visions that she was having when they were trying to locate him. And so Hope believes that Landon has burnt up this bus and killed all these people. And so she boards the bus and she's like, I'm going to be the villain of Landon's story. First episode done. Okay, the first episode, there's like a bajillion things that happen. So like that was a lot. So hopefully these next episodes are going to be a little faster. Episode 2, some people want to watch the world burn. Following the events of the previous episode, Hope and Alaric are going to go find Landon and figure out like, did he burn this bus of people? Raphael, his brother, wants to come, and he pretty much like forces himself on this trip. Raph thinks he's innocent because that's his brother. Everyone's kind of worried that Landon is going to expose the school for being supernatural. And Hope kind of blames herself for everything that happens ever, and specifically this. And she tells this to school psychiatrist Emma Tigg, who is a witch. Isn't that great? They have a school therapist. Yeah, they don't use it as much as they should. She blames herself for putting the school in jeopardy, and she's just very angsty, quoting Shakespeare. And then she gets a like big like grimoire full of spells from her bed. She pulls out a page that just has like a skull on it. So she is now equipped with a death spell. She wants to kill Landon Kirby, and I'm supporting her. Raphael, Hope, and Alaric get to the highway where the burnt out bus was, and they're kind of just like walking through the woods trying to find Landon. And they find a mysterious woman covered in soot walking around. And they believe that she is a survivor of the fire on the bus. The mysterious woman is played by Lauren Ridloff. Yeah, like My Beautiful Makari from the Eternals, Lauren Ridloff. Love her. Eventually, Hope finds Landon hidden out somewhere, and she like magically throws him against the wall, and she's like, tell me where the knife is. He says he doesn't remember taking the knife and he didn't set the bus on fire, and like Hope does not believe him. And so Landon tells us that Lauren Ridloff, mystery woman in the forest, she wants the knife and she burned the bus. So then the crew calls Dorian. Dorian is from the Vampire Diaries, if you remember him. He is the school's librarian, and his sole purpose in this show is literally to answer the phone and look through the books and tell people what the monster they're fighting is and like what the weakness is. That's pretty much his only function. And at first they're like, okay, she's like a pyromancer. She's a witch that can do fire spells. But then they figure out that she is a dragon. We have dragons in the Vampire Diaries universe. Alaric is like, I have been hunting supernatural beings forever. I've never seen a dragon before. Dragons aren't real. And so this starts this new thing that Legacies is trying to do, where they're doing monsters of the week. If you've ever seen something like Supernatural, like Buffy, every episode there's a different monster and the crew kind of has to put the monster down. You know, like I said, we're having some Buffy influences, and like in theory, the monster of the week thing works. However, the execution is not good at all in this show. This method that they're trying, it does come at the expense of like real character arcs for our main characters, because a lot of the times they have the monsters come in and they have the characters learn the same thing every time. That's the problem with the Monster of the Week format, and you'll see kind of throughout the show that the episodes that don't have a Monster of the Week actually tend to be better. So now we're wondering, why is there a dragon in the Vampire Diaries when we've gone 13 seasons without one? So that's one of the mysteries of the show, of these monsters that we've never seen before are popping up in Mystic Falls. So she's like a proper dragon and she like breathes fire from her mouth. Raphael and Hope work to stab her, but the problem is they don't stab her where they're supposed to, in the soft spot. So she gets up and turns into an actual like Game of Thrones dragon with wings and everything. And she's like flying. The question is, how are you meant to even fight a flying dragon? Well, remember, Hope Michelson packed a death spell to use on Landon Kirby. So instead of using it on Landon, she uses it on the dragon, and that somehow reverts the dragon back to her human form, and Hope kills her. So Hope has killed the dragon. Rest in peace to the dragon. So Hope has just killed the dragon with a death spell, and Alaric is not happy about that. Black magic is banned from the school. Alaric's like, black magic poisons your mind and makes you evil, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well, this is your father talking. Like, this is your father's genes. He loves to tell Hope that she is Klaus's daughter as a dig. And like, God forbid she uses her Michelson lineage and power to like defeat the monsters. Like, nobody else can. Hope can. It's just another way that like he's trying to weaken her, which is like a weird thing that's going on, because they rely on Hope always to save the day, but now she's too powerful to save the day. Like, how else were they going to defeat that dragon if it wasn't for the death spell, right? That has been solved in the woods with Raph, Landon, Alaric, and Hope. Back at the Salvatore boarding school, it is the annual flag football game between Salvatore boarding school and the Mystic Falls High School. So it's supernatural beings versus the townies. And these schools have beef. One thing about this football game is the Stallions, who are the Salvatore school, which is the logo I have on my shirt, they throw the game every year because they don't want people to suspect that they're supernatural, because apparently being good at football has something to do with being supernatural. They lose horrifically every year. I'm talking swatting balls away that are being thrown to you, tripping on purpose, all of that stuff. Because Alaric, who is usually like the coach, he's away on this trip to get Landon, Lizzie wants to make him proud and throw epically, like lose in a fashion that has never happened before. During this football game, we are introduced to some new characters. We have Caleb, who's a vampire who goes to the Salvatore boarding school. He is played by Chris Lee. Chris Lee, who was on Hamilton in Chicago, musical theater baddie. And then we have townies, Connor and Dana. They go to Mystic Falls and they are humans and they are both assholes. That's all you need to know about them. Dana and Lizzie have crazy beef. Dana's very ableist to Lizzie. Dana's mom or like parents are pharmacists, and so she's always taking jabs at Lizzie and her medication. And I'm like, I don't know if that's eating like you think it is. Once she says that comment to her, all gloves are off with Lizzie. Lizzie wants to beat them bad now. And so she's like, we're going to start using our powers. And they do. MG jumps really high. They start using their magic to like make them drop the ball, all of that stuff. This is a problem because Josie is a rule follower, and she's like, Dad told us to throw the game, and like we can't expose ourselves, guys. Like we're being stupid. And so she wants to lose, Lizzie wants to win. And then Penelope, who isn't playing in the game, but she's just there for moral support, she's like, guys, why don't we just not use our powers, but like try? Like, we have two decent athletes. We can win and still not use our powers. And I don't know why they didn't think of this in the first place, but Penelope has a point. So then it gets to the final play of the game. Stallions, if they get a touchdown, they will win the game. Lizzie throws a Hail Mary pass to Caleb, and he is going to catch it until Josie Saltzman does a spell to make Caleb drop the ball, and they lose. She would rather disappoint her sister than disappoint her dad. At the end of these like recreational sporting matches, you do like a line up at the end and you say good game to all the players, and Josie exercises good sportsmanship, says good game to Dana. Dana calls her a loser, and then Lizzie punches her in the face. So now there's a brawl on the field. So those are those two storylines wrapped up. This all ends with Hope goes to bury the dragon's body, and Raphael and Landon have jumped ship, and now they're hitchhiking across Virginia. Landon has left Hope yet again, and it's only episode 2, and the counter is up to 2. He's batting 100. Landon has left Hope a letter saying that he's sorry for lying and hurting her. Also, there's a gargoyle at the gate of the school. So that's like our next monster. Episode 3 is called We're Being Punked, Pedro. After the events of last episode, everyone has done something bad. School got into a fight, and Hope did black magic. Alark is making everybody go do community service with the Mystic Falls kids. Hope and Josie are paired up to clean up trash. They kind of are building a bridge. Lizzie feels betrayed by this kind of, and then Lizzie, MG, and Caleb are cleaning up graffiti on some town windows. Hope and Josie actually have a really great time together. Hope stabs herself in the foot. Josie pulls it out. They banter, they laugh. The ice is broken between the two. Yay! Lizzie, MG, and Caleb are not doing so great. Unfortunately, Lizzie gets milkshaked like she's in Glee by the townie Connor. And then everyone laughs at her and she runs away back to the school. And Caleb isn't enjoying the community service because he believes that the supernatural species are more superior. He doesn't believe that he should apologize for the powers that he has. Lizzie, freshly milkshaked, comes back to the school and hangs out with a cute little witch boy named Pedro. We love Pedro. And they are chilling in the garden. They're talking and they encounter the gargoyle. And so the gargoyle starts running after them. Lizzie gets slashed across the stomach by the gargoyle, but not before she traps him in the school grounds. So the gargoyle can't leave. I guess they're not doing trash cleanup anymore because MG is seen kissing Dana. Even though they are kissing, we do find out that Dana doesn't actually like MG. She is just trying to make Connor jealous because she is kind of like cheating with Connor, who is dating Sasha, and Sasha is Dana's best friend. And so there's a love triangle there. Remember how I said Caleb believes that he should be able to use his powers and all that stuff because he's a vampire and a superior species? He is found feeding from Dana, and then he compels her to go put on a scarf, like the old Vampire Diaries days. After the encounter with the dragon, they have taken the knife back to the school, and Alark is researching the knife and he's trying to figure out like what it does. He finds out that it's literally indestructible. He can't destroy it. Hope does astral projection with Josie to see what Landon is up to, and then it stops because Josie experiences twin pain from Lizzie because Lizzie has been paralyzed by the gargoyle and is kind of dying. So Hope checks in on Landon. They were eating roadkill for a little bit. It was like they were in Yellow Jackets roasting an animal over the fire. And then they were like, actually, let's try and make money because I don't want to eat a rabbit anymore. And so they get this bright idea to have Raphael start doing parkour and hustling people. He's literally like scaling buildings like no human could do because he's a werewolf. And it is so obvious that there is something else going on because he's literally like, you know how like werewolves kind of like go on all fours like on the ground? He's literally doing that like up a ladder. And it's like, bro, like hide it a little better. This gains the attention of some werewolf hunters in the vicinity. And so Raphael and Landon go back to their little camp in the woods and they get shot by tranquilizers and get tied up. But then they wake up and they see that one of the dudes that was betting on them has an arrow through his chest. Because reformed vampire hunter, now employee of the Salvatore boarding school, Jeremy Gilbert, have saved Raph and Landon from the werewolf hunters. And he goes to take them back to the school. And one thing the show loves to do is just name drop or like put a little cameo of people from the Vampire Diaries. We do find out, however, that Landon had actually received a note of warning from Jeremy saying, run wolf or die, because he was like, you're being too obvious. And Landon just threw the note away. And Raph was like, why didn't you tell me that we were in danger? And Landon's like, well, we were having fun. I didn't want to ruin the fun. I didn't want to be a party pooper. And you're going to see this throughout the entire show. And it like gets worse and worse as it goes on. But Landon has the most insane victim complex I've ever seen. He loves to get the people around him in trouble and sometimes in like fatal danger, but he never takes any blame for any of it. And he actually manages to make it the other person's fault. That's what Landon and Raphael were up to. Now, because Josie was experiencing the twin pain from Lizzie, she's like, something's wrong with Lizzie. So Hope and Josie rush back to the school and they team up with Alaric to take down the gargoyle. What happens here is the gargoyle is about to stab Hope, and Alaric jumps right in front of Hope like a human shield, and it doesn't hurt him. Hope and Josie work together to destroy the gargoyle, and then Josie is subsequently pissed at Alaric for risking his life to save Hope, but he's like, well, in my research it says that it doesn't harm humans, so I knew I would be okay. But Josie still doesn't like that idea that he did that, because he has 2 daughters to provide for, because then they would be orphans as well. So Hope and Josie take down this gargoyle by joining hands, because remember, Josie is a siphoner witch, which means that she doesn't have magic of her own. She has to draw it from something else. So she siphons Hope to use the magic to take down the gargoyle, right? However, it is canon that firstborn Michelson witches are extremely powerful. And so Hope is like crazy powerful. She could have done it on her own. You know what I mean? And then also the very act of siphoning does kind of drain whatever you're siphoning, right? So like you could say because Hope is like so powerful, she has probably like an unlimited battery. If Hope is so powerful, why can't she just defeat the gargoyle herself? I feel like it is another way of like nerfing Hope, and also I guess having this like girl power moment that's like not really necessary, because like how else are you gonna get the twins involved when like only Hope knows a spell and only Hope has the power to take down these monsters? So it's just weird. After the gargoyle attack on the school, Alaric holds an assembly and pretty much tells all the students that there are monsters that we've never seen before coming after us. So now everyone knows about the monsters. We're kind of back to square one. Raph and Landon are back at the school, and there are angsty stares happening everywhere. First off, Josie's on the couch with Lizzie, and Hope looks at her after, you know, the great day they had. They were bonding, and Josie looks away first and gives her the cold shoulder. Hope turns around. Second plane has hit the towers, and she sees Landon. Actually, I think this still is from that episode, and he kind of just like stares at her. Whatever's happening with the monsters, we do know that they want the knife. And so now Alaric has given the knife to Dorian, and Dorian is going off of school grounds to research it and also to keep the monsters from coming to the school. So now the episode ends with Dana and Sasha in the car right outside the Salvatore school gates, because they're going to graffiti the gate. It's the middle of the night, and Sasha gets out of the car to see like what's going on outside. Mistake number 1. She screams, a body hits the roof of the car, and then Dana screams. End of episode. I love this pointer thing, I gotta say. Okay, episode 4. Hope is not the goal. So remember how Caleb is kind of a species supremacist, and he's like, well, I'm a vampire and I need blood, so I can do whatever I want because I'm better. So it turns out that he has been sneaking out of the school to go feed on humans, and that's not allowed. And MG catches him. This is suspicious because now that Dana and Sasha are missing, MG thinks that Caleb has something to do with their disappearance. Not good. Also remember that Caleb was drinking from Dana last episode. So now this whole episode is about looking for Dana and Sasha. Lizzie, MG, Hope, and Caleb volunteer to go to Mystic Falls and do like a undercover mission to see what's going on and like why they've disappeared. And then also Landon tags along for some reason. While that mission is happening, Josie is showing Raphael around the school. Raph still is gravitating towards Josie despite Josie kind of pushing him back to Lizzie, and like Josie likes him too, so hopefully something happens here. And so while Raphael is getting acclimated to the school, we meet Jed, and he is also a werewolf and is the current alpha of the Salvatore school pack. And so Raphael is a new werewolf at the school, so he needs to become a part of the pack. Jed's pretty much like, okay, like you just need to be initiated, and you'd think like, oh no, initiation, like what are they gonna do, beat him up? Well, no, actually all he needs to do is tell them like how he activated his curse. But Raphael isn't quite ready to do that to strangers, and so they actually do beat him up. They beat him up 3v1, and actually Josie comes along to save Raph. The werewolves scurry away, and then Raphael is like really angry that he's just gotten beat up. So while the kids are at the school looking for Dana, Alaric and Sheriff Matt Donovan are looking through the woods, and they find Dana's car flipped over, and they also find Dana's body in the woods. And so rest in peace to Dana Lillian. On her body, she has like these bite marks on her neck, and so everyone thinks a vampire has killed her, and now everyone thinks it's Caleb. But then Dana's body is missing from the woods, and she walks out of the woods, so she's no longer dead. Now everyone thinks that she's in transition to become a vampire. They give Landon, because Landon's kind of unfamiliar with all of this, they give him a crash course on how vampirism works. And pretty much the whole thing is you die with vampire blood in your system, you wake up in transition, and you have to drink human blood to complete the transition. And so while they're doing that history lesson, Dana starts to puke, like a lot. she pukes her guts out. It is like a really funny scene. Like this show has quite a problem with the tone and kind of like the jokes that they're trying to throw at you. But this scene I genuinely think is funny. Lizzie's like, I think her soul just got on my shoes. And then Caleb's like, ugh, what that girl eat? And it's hilarious. The Hope's like, oh my God, she's puking her guts out. And then it cuts to Dana's corpse shriveled up on the floor with like a bunch of puke next to it. So Dana is dead again. You were dead. You were alive. Now she's dead again. What is it they say? I'm alive, but I'm dead. I'm alive, but I'm dead. Everyone's like, okay, it wasn't a vampire because that doesn't happen when you turn into a vampire. So like, who did this? Everyone's kind of blaming Landon, and Hope isn't really sticking up for him, which is kind of hilarious. And Landon's kind of pissed, but also like, he hasn't done much to earn her forgiveness. Like he wrote one letter. Like that's not going to do much. And so Landon storms off and he ends up in the bathroom, and Connor walks in, one of the townies. Connor used to bully Landon when he went to Mystic Falls High. So Landon tries to argue with him. Then Landon punches him in the face, and you find out that Connor is a spider. He has become a spider. So that's our monster for the episode, and there's been like webs around. That explains the puncture marks, right? So Landon runs back to the group and is like, Connor's a spider. We got to go get him. So then they're kind of like trying to follow Connor wherever he went. Meanwhile, Josie and Raphael, after that whole thing in the hallway, end up at the mill, which is like where they throw the parties. It's like on school grounds. Raphael's like really upset, and Josie helps recenter him because she's very experienced with what always happens to Lizzie. They see spider webs in the mill. They're like, okay, let's go investigate. And so they go up there and they find Sasha's body cocooned in the spider webs. So she's presumably alive. And as Josie and Raph are investigating, they themselves get tangled up in the spider webs, which is like so completely avoidable. And it's like hilarious how it happens. It's like they want to get trapped in it. It's really funny. Raphael's like, can't you just like magic your way out of this? And she's like, well, I'm a siphoner and like I can't do it technically now. But she gets the bright idea. Remember, Josie has a crush on Raph. She gets the bright idea because her hands are all tied up. What's not tied up is her mouth. So Josie, kisses Raphael to siphon magic out of him so she can get them out of the webs. And it works, and they get out. So now both groups have converged on the mill. We have another girl power moment. Hope's like, Josie, Lizzie, come here, take my hands. And then they siphon, and then they explode the spider together. Bunch of spider group gets on them, and there's a Youngblood song playing. Either way, Spider is dead, which also means Connor is dead. Rest in peace, Connor. We're running out of townies. However, Sasha is not dead. She wakes up from her like little cocoon, and they kind of compel her to forget everything about the spider thing, but her friends are dead. That sucks for her. At the end of the day, Raphael does the initiation and tells everybody that he killed his girlfriend, Cassie, to activate his trait. So this episode ends with a lot of relationships on the fritz. Hope and Landon have a meeting. Hope and Landon are talking by the dock, and Hope's like, well, it's going to take me a while and a lot of other people to trust you. And Landon's upset. And Landon's like, well, why does nobody trust me? Blah, blah, blah. When, like I said before, he's literally done nothing to prove himself worthy of trust. He's literally been here for 2 days, but he pouts and he gets up and leaves Hope at the dock. So number 3, don't worry, we'll be back at the dock for this. This is a very popular spot for a lot of leaving to happen. The twins are beefing with their dad because they're upset that the school isn't teaching them offensive magic spells and they don't know how to defeat these monsters that are coming after them, and they have to rely on Hope, which is like crazy. Like, how I don't understand how you are like trying to teach these kids to do good and like live if like they don't know how to defend themselves. And then MG and Caleb are also fighting because Caleb is mad that MG told everybody that he's been feeding off of humans. Caleb drops the bombshell that the blood bags that they're feeding the students at the school with are not human blood. It is animal blood. And so that inherently makes them weaker. Caleb gets in trouble for feeding on the cheerleaders. Matt Donovan threatens him, and he almost kind of attacks Matt, but then Alarg vervains him. And then Matt threatens the school, and Alarg threatens Matt. A lot of threatening happening. Dorian is out in the field with the knife, and something appears at his door. Episode ends. Episode 5. Malivore. The thing that is at Dorian's door last episode that I mentioned, not important. He kills it immediately. However, a new monster stumbles in his door, and it is a green plant lady, and she is a dryad. So that's like a tree spirit. Alark comes to Dorian because this is the first monster that can actually talk, so they can ask it things and see what's happening. While Alark is away, the Salvatore boarding school is doing elections. they are going to form an honor council. So this is an attempt at democracy because the school doesn't really have a say in what's going on because King Headmaster Alaric pretty much decides everything. And so they come up with this bright idea that like they're going to have one student represent each species, and then school psychiatrist Emma Tigg is going to represent the younger kids, and they're going to vote on issues of the school. I think this is a really cool way of kind of exploring the interspecies relationships in the school. I think it's one of the coolest things about Legacies, the fact that all of these species are intermingling and there's decades old species rivalries and stuff like that. So I think it's really cool how they navigate that. All that to say that they establish it this season and then like it's never seen again after this season. However, for this episode, the newly elected honor council will have the decision about whether Mr. Landon Kirby will get to stay at the school. So naturally, Raphael puts on his lobbying hat and goes to every person who he thinks is going to win the election and says, hey, can you vote for Landon to stay? So let's take it species by species. So there's going to be 3 representatives: vampire, witch, and werewolf. Starting with the witches, Lizzie Saltzman believes that she is a shoo-in for this election. Lizzie has this perception of her own popularity that is just not what is real life. She's not as popular and is not as well liked as she believes she is. She is running a Hillary Clinton-esque campaign. I'm with her posters, everything like that. Lizzie is already preparing her victory speech while her sister Josie is actually going out and doing the heavy lifting and brokering deals with witches in the other covens at the school to get them to vote for Lizzie. While that is happening, Penelope Park is running a smear campaign against Lizzie. Penelope and Josie are having like flirty X vibes. Caleb is still in jail for feeding on cheerleaders. He's very mad at MG for ratting him out, and that's kind of ruining MG's credibility with the vampires. And so MG says that he will get Caleb out of jail if he tells the vampires to vote for MG. Then that leads MG to run on a free Caleb platform. Raphael asks Jed, because Jed is the alpha, Jed is going to get the vote. He asks him as like a favor that he votes for Landon to stay, and Jed goes, actually, no. I'm not going to vote for Landon to stay as punishment for you not submitting to me as your alpha the first time, and like how he was kind of resistant to the initiation. Raph doesn't like that. And so Raphael takes it upon himself, because somewhere in the werewolf rulebook, you can challenge an alpha for the leadership. Anyone can. And so he challenges Jed for alpha, and Raphael beats the shit out of Jed, and Jed loses his alpha status, and now Raphael will become the representative for the werewolves. Raphael has been here for 3 days, and now he is the alpha of the Salvatore pack. Cool. So now that Raphael has secured the werewolf vote, he goes to Lizzie and says, Lizzie, I think you're going to win, so can you vote for Landon? And Lizzie is like, yes, I can, but will you be my date to my birthday next week? And Raph's like, okay, sure. So they do a little deal there. Josie's kind of upset because remember, Josie has just kissed Raph in the spider webs last episode. And so she's like, did our kiss in the spider webs mean nothing? I guess it did, because now he's willing to date the other sister so Landon can stay. Hope's not really involved in this electoral stuff, so she is actually testing Landon to see if Landon is any type of supernatural. Remember, he wasn't compelled, so they do believe he is supernatural of some sort, but Landon's like sucking at all the tests. Like, he doesn't have super strength, he doesn't have super speed, he's making a fool of himself. It's kind of embarrassing. Landon is saying that Hope is biased, and so he doesn't want her to run his tests, as if her bias against him will change the fact that he can't lift a very big log. Emma comes in and is like, yeah, he has no magic in his lineage, which is weird because at least some people have some trace. So there's something fishy going on with that. They don't really know. Landon doesn't want to give up doing the tests because he really wants to stay at the school. They do all these tests. There's no real conclusive evidence. And Landon, as he does, he comes in with his whiny bullshit. And he's like, why are the tests inconclusive? I'm upset. I want to stay, blah, blah, blah. And Hope's like, well, don't blame me because you're not special, which is so true. What does Hope have to do with any of this? Nothing. Landon apologizes again to Hope, brings up how he's a foster kid and all he wants is a home. It's the same thing as the past 3 episodes, but for some reason, this really touches Hope, and she's like, okay, I forgive you. They also, in this episode, they introduced this truth ball. It's a supernatural lie detector that when you're holding it and you say something, it'll glow red if you're telling a lie, and then it'll glow blue if you're telling the truth. And so she sees Landon is telling the truth, and for some reason, that convinces her he deserves to be forgiven. Whatever. Dorian and Alaric are talking to the the Dryad, and she won't answer any of their questions until they put her in contact with a man named Oliver. And that was her love. They're like, well, he's probably dead. Well, actually, he's a vampire. He became a vampire so they could be together forever. They call in a favor to one Bonnie Bennett from the Vampire Diaries. Like I said, they love to just name drop people for like absolutely no reason. But she does this like locator spell, and he comes to see the Dryad, and he doesn't remember her at all. She's telling her all of these details about their life together in like the specific place, and he's like, yeah, but like I don't know who you are. Whatever happened to the Dryad, the dragon, the gargoyle has made it so people have forgotten who they are. And so that's kind of why we have these myths. And because they held up their end of the bargain, the Dryad tells Dorian and Alaric some lore. She says that she woke up in an endless pit of darkness and came back into the world with the urge to possess the knife. She says there's a dark place beneath the earth, and in order to be free, she has to take the knife there. She draws this mysterious symbol. She actually tries to attack Dorian and Alaric to try and get the knife. They shoot her with an arrow, and then she requests to be taken into a field, calls the black pit Malivore, and then she turns into a tree and dies. Now we're going to do some updating on the map. So Dryad, dead. Sorry, girl. So now I have the Malivore symbols. So we're going to put them on the monsters. So the dragon was from Malivore. The Dryad was from Malivore. I'll put Connor as well. Now, as we talk about some monsters, we'll put some more Malivore symbols around. So that's that story wrapped up. Now back to the election at the Salvatore School. I know you guys were anxiously waiting the voting results. To nobody's surprise, Raphael becomes the werewolf representative because he has beat up Jed to become the alpha. So of course they're going to vote for the alpha. The vampire representative is actually Caleb. He has betrayed MG. When MG sent all the vampires to talk to Caleb, Caleb was actually like, hey, actually vote for me. Don't vote for MG. And it's actually really sad because like they're ready to announce the vampire representative, and MG's like straightening his bow tie and he's like ready to stand up, and he loses. And now for the witch representative. In a shocking turn of events, Josie Saltzman is the witch representative. Everybody's surprised. Josie's surprised. Lizzie's surprised. The only person who's not surprised is Penelope Park, because Penelope Park was running a smear campaign against Lizzie, but she was also endorsing her ex-girlfriend, Josie Saltzman. What more is there to say? Josie, being the pushover she is, she tries to give up her spot to the runner-up, and her sister wasn't even the runner-up. She was nowhere close. And so now our honor council is set. Raphael, Caleb, Josie, and Emma. Now you may be saying to yourself, that is only 4 people. How are they going to do this if there's like a split vote, 2 and 2? Hope Michelson is also on the honor council. Everyone's shocked and appalled by this. She literally walks into the room and is like, hey guys, I'm here. And Caleb's like, who voted for her? And so pretty much what happens is Hope calls Alaric and says, I want a seat on the honor council. I'm the only one of my kind. I'm the only one that can represent my interests. And so pretty much she just like gets it unopposed. It is quite hilarious how she just like walks in and everybody else was like struggling to campaign. And she was like busy doing the stuff with Landon, and now she's like, I'm on the honor council. Okay, so now we have 5 people on the honor council. Also, while all of this was happening, after Jed loses his alpha ship, he goes and beats the shit out of Landon. Jed is really pissed because before Landon got here, everything was fine and he was alpha. And so now everything's Landon's fault. So Landon is now sitting in bed wounded as the honor council votes for his fate. The honor council is going to vote. Remember, we're voting on whether Landon can stay at the school. Emma Tigg, school psychiatrist who is voting on behalf of the younger kids, is voting on the side of inclusion. So she votes for him to stay, and then she literally just leaves. She's like, I gotta go find Jed because he beat up Landon. So talk to you guys later. So now it's up to the rest of them to decide. Caleb votes for Landon to leave because right now they still believe Landon is kind of human. Like he hasn't shown any supernatural powers. Caleb argues that humans don't make space for supernaturals in their world. Why should they do it for them? Obviously, Raphael votes for Landon to stay. So now it's 2-1 in favor of him staying. In a shocking turn of events, Hope Michelson votes for Landon to leave. She argues that Landon is in danger because he's quasi-human, using Jed beating up Landon as evidence that like we can't protect Landon from like all of these people in the school. Like what happens when someone tries to like bite him or someone like uses magic on him? Like all of us can't take on that responsibility of protecting him 24/7. Hope visited Landon while he was beat up in bed, and she was like, do you feel safe at the school? He said yes. She had the truth ball on her. He was lying. So he doesn't feel safe. So now the vote is 2-2. And Miss Pushover Josie Saltzman. I say this with love and light. I love Josie Saltzman. She's my favorite character. She has the deciding vote. And so remember, Raphael is her little crush. So the question is she going to appease Raph? And the answer is no. She is not. She votes for Landon to leave. She argues that ever since Landon came to the school, her father, her sister have all been in danger and she doesn't want to put her family at risk. And so Landon needs to go. And Raphael is super pissed at her, throws a chair backwards, and like Caleb has to like get in between the two. What a rush. What a rush the honor council is, right? It's such a cool thing that they introduced into the show. They take all this time to establish it. They take a whole episode to establish it. And after this season, they barely use it. And you know what? That is a common theme within this show. They will introduce very cool things and then we will never see it used ever again. After her election loss, Lizzie is upset. She is in the gym punching a punching bag in like the weakest way imaginable. It's quite sad, actually. Like she's trying to get out her anger and she's not really moving that thing. To make her day even worse, Penelope Park comes into the gym to rip her a new one and pretty much is like, she treats Josie like shit, which is true. You know, she doesn't think about Josie's feelings. She doesn't even think if Josie wanted to win. Josie takes all of her time to take care of Lizzie, but she doesn't have time for herself, all of that stuff. Penelope pretty much says like Josie isn't going to fight her sister, so Penelope will fight Lizzie for Josie. Lizzie gets upset, siphons the floor through her feet, and explodes the punching bag with her mind. Equally angry Raphael comes into the gym and they have angry sex. They sleep together. Mind you, there's sand everywhere, but they do it on the gym floor. So Landon has been voted out, so he must leave. Hope walks Landon to the bus stop. Technically, this is number 4 on the Landon leaving counter. Admittedly, he was kicked out, so like it wasn't voluntary, but like it still counts. He's averaging like 1 an episode. It's kind of crazy. Hope gives him a ticket to New Orleans because she's going to hook him up with a family friend. I think it's Vincent. He is going to help Landon find his birth mom. Hope also gives Landon an SOS bracelet, so when he hits it, she has another bracelet on her wrist that acts like a compass, so she can go find him and save him. Hope's walking away from the bus stop. Landon presses the bracelet because he thinks he's cute. She turns around and they kiss. They kiss in the middle of the street. The bus is coming and they kiss in the middle of the street. They're going to get run over. At the end of the episode, Landon's on the bus and he is looking at his journal and he has a picture of him and his mom. And on her neck, the mom has the Malivore symbol on her necklace. So what does that mean? I don't know. Episode 6 is Mom Be Dearest. It's party time. The twins are throwing their 16th birthday at the school. The episode opens with a figure in a wedding dress walking down the hall. She ends up in Alaric's office where Alaric is on the phone with Caroline Forbes, who is the twins' like surrogate mother. And he's like, you got to get back for their birthday. Like, I can't tell them like why you can't be here. So there's some secrets going on in the Saltzman family. And so we find out that the woman in the wedding dress is Joe Laughlin, Alaric Saltzman's dead wife and the biological mother of the twins. She is alive and she is in a wedding dress, a bloodied wedding dress, like fresh from her death at the wedding. Buckle in on some lore from the Vampire Diaries about Joe Laughlin. So, like I said, she was literally getting married to Alaric. Their wedding was very nice. They're literally at the altar saying their vows when Joe Laughlin gets stabbed out of nowhere. She's just bleeding. Turns out, and I do say this quite literally, her evil brother Kai stabbed her. So this is because he wanted to be the leader of the Gemini coven, which is like the coven that their family is a part of, where there's a lot of twins. And so his sister and these unborn twins posed the threat to his reign. He killed them. He killed the leader of the coven, which is his father. And the thing with the Gemini coven is when you kill the leader, everybody else in the coven dies. And so like he died too, but he had vampire blood in his system. And Kai is also a siphoner witch, which is like Josie and Lizzie. So he became a heretic. So that's a type of hybrid. Usually when witches turn into vampires, they lose their connection to their magic. But when you're a siphoner, you never really had any magic to begin with. And so when you become a vampire, you can siphon yourself. So you get best of both worlds. It's pretty great. Okay, so yeah. So now he's a heretic. Gemini Coven's last act as a coven was magically implanting the twins into Caroline Forbes' womb. This also happened because the actress Candace King was pregnant during the filming of season 7 of The Vampire Diaries. So they made her pregnant. That's your crash course on the Gemini Coven and Joe Laughlin and everything like that. Getting back to the party, Josie finds out that Lizzie and Raphael had sex, and she's very angry about that. Mind you, it's their birthday. So while that's happening, Penelope comes to their room and is like, happy birthday, guys. Did you know that your mom isn't coming to celebrate your birthday with you? And so they're upset. And so the twins rush into Alaric's office. They siphon a barrier spell that's there, and they see their dead mother. And they're shocked. and they're like, oh my God, it's our mom. So now there's a Saltzman family reunion happening. People do get resurrected all the time, but Alaric is very suspicious because he's like, this is my dead wife. We've had monsters roaming around, so like there's something happening. But they interrogate Jo with the truth ball, and she's telling the truth about everything that they're saying. Like, she doesn't want to hurt them. She is Jo Laughlin, all of that stuff. Lizzie takes after Caroline. Josie takes after Jo. Josie is ecstatic that their biological mom is there. However, Lizzie is kind of cold to her because she thinks that being friendly to Jo would be cheating on their mom, Caroline. So while that's happening, back in the football episode, MG and Penelope are kind of scheming together, and Penelope agreed to be MG's wingwoman to get Lizzie to pay attention to him. Penelope says that she kissed MG so Lizzie would actually look at him. I don't know if that was the best thing to do. So this episode, she agrees. Remember, Raphael and Lizzie made a deal that Lizzie would vote for Landon to stay if Raphael took Lizzie to her birthday dance. However, Lizzie never ended up the representative, but Raphael is an honorable guy, so he's going to keep his end of the bargain. Raphael is Lizzie's date. Penelope agrees to help MG by keeping Raphael away from the dance so him and Lizzie can do something. This is going to be his final shot to try and get Lizzie to like him. And then after that, he's going to let go of Lizzie for good. Hope has a therapy session with Emma, and she's kind of like crushing over Landon really hard. It's kind of cute, kind of annoying. Hope also agrees to help Raphael with some etiquette and dance lessons to prepare for the party tonight. There are flirty vibes, very flirty vibes between Hope and Raphael, despite Raphael being in a love triangle with Josie and Lizzie, and then Hope also being with his foster brother. Hope kind of complains about being lonely, but he's like, well, you can't complain if it's like self-imposed. They're kind of fighting, but then Penelope locks them in the gym together. The twins leave to go get ready for the party, and Josie helps Lizzie get ready. Then the party's starting soon, and Lizzie's like, well, why aren't you dressed? And it's like, girl, when would I have had time? So then Lizzie leaves to go to the party without her, and Josie's kind of still getting ready. Josie sees an envelope on her bed, and it is a gift from Hope Michelson. And it says, I hope all your birthday wishes come true. Inside of the envelope is a talisman. And so Josie immediately puts it on. Josie goes to visit Jo again, and she pretty much asks her to help her get ready for the party and like braid her hair. Jo's like, well, shouldn't you be at the party? It's your party. And then Josie's like, well, no one's going to notice that I'm gone, which is like so sad. It is like a very cute scene in their bonding. However, just before this, we do see Jo looking through the cabinets in Alaric's office. In the mirror, we see like a zombified version of Jo. So something is happening there. So then Josie gets a bright idea. Actually, Mom, do you want to come to the party? And Jo was like, yeah, sure. And so they're walking to the party, and Jo passes out. And Josie's like, oh my God, what happened? Then Jo wakes up and her eyes are white. So now she's like a zombie. And she runs towards Josie. So now Josie's in trouble. That's not good. So now the party has started, and Lizzie has walked into her party. It is giving high school prom. It is in the school. Everyone is in suits. Like, it's kind of crazy. Raph isn't there to escort her because he is trapped in the gym with Hope. And so MG steps in, and they dance a lot. MG is really proving to Lizzie that, like, I'm here. I know a lot about you. I really like you. I'm the guy for you. Just telling you now, MG and Lizzie are like the slow burn ship of the show. Like, he's always waiting in the wings to see when she's going to give him attention, and then she never does. And Lizzie goes through all of these guys who aren't really right for her, and then only to find out that MG has been there this whole time. Raph and Hope are still stuck together, and they're making digs at each other. Raphael tells her that Raphael tells Hope that she should get more friends to make up for the family she doesn't have, which is like a crazy line and like quite horrible, but very true. And then we learn that Raphael doesn't really like Lizzie, and that she's kind of a rebound for him because it's literally been like 6 weeks since his girlfriend died. So finally, a slow song is playing at the dance/birthday party, and MG is gearing up for his moment. Just when Raphael makes his way and slow dances with Lizzie Saltzman and says, hey, thanks for keeping her busy for me. Lizzie wants to make the relationship official. And what does Raphael do? Raphael ends the situationship on her birthday, like a proper gentleman. Oh, this poor girl. Now Lizzie's sad. And now Lizzie's crying. And now Lizzie's like, where's my sister? Because she is finally in emotional turmoil and needs Josie to support her. When she was having fun before, she didn't care where Josie was. But now that she needs something from Josie, she needs to know where Josie is. Remember, Zombie Jo was running towards Josie. Jo has run into Alaric and says, I don't know what happened. Like, something happened. I was with Josie and now I can't find her. And like, my nails are full of dirt. But then she gets possessed by this British dude. So she just has like this accent. And they're like, give me the knife or your daughter will run out of air, because Josie Saltzman has been buried alive. Josie Saltzman is buried alive. So now we gotta go find Josie. And immediately, Alaric goes to find the knife to give it to this mysterious British man that has resurrected Joe and buried his daughter alive. He's ready to just give the knife away. He doesn't know what the knife does, but he is going to give it away. But Dorian is 2 steps ahead of him and has gone with Emma with the knife because he knew that Alaric would somehow be manipulated into getting rid of the knife. Alaric is pissed, even though Dorian read him to filth. Literally, like, the knife could cause the apocalypse. Like, who knows? And, like, we can't let it get into the wrong hands. Josie's buried alive. Hope finds out, and Hope enlists the help of MG and Penelope, who are also kind of like in the woods, and they go and find Josie. They're in the cemetery looking for Josie. All of a sudden, these zombies start popping up out of the graves from the ground. Let me tell you, Hope Michelson is very serious about finding Josie. She is yelling at MG. She's like, damn it, MG, get up and find her. They finally dig her out. They find Josie after MG locks the fuck in. Everybody's relieved. And Hope's like, oh my God, the talisman worked. And Josie's like, what's it supposed to do? And Hope says, the talisman is supposed to make quiet things heard. Hope got Josie a gift for her birthday that allows her to raise her voice and speak up because, as we know, Josie is a pushover. That is her one personality trait. Obviously, Biomom Joe does not enjoy the fact that she has put her daughter's life in danger. Essentially, she doesn't want to be a liability anymore. So she suggests that her daughters essentially euthanize her so she can no longer be a danger to them by siphoning the zombie magic that is keeping her alive. And then we get some lore where Joe asks Alaric, do the twins know what happens when they turn 22? And so here we learn that the twins do not know about the merge. Now, the merge is a Gemini coven tradition that at the age of 22, the twins in the coven must merge. And so the merge is a battle of power where the stronger twin will win and the weaker twin will die. And actually they kind of merge together. Like, you kind of get some of the personality traits of your weaker twin. And so obviously Alaric and Caroline do not want this to happen. And so that is what Caroline has been up to, where she goes on like missions and travels and stuff. They say that Caroline is going on recruiting missions, but in actuality, she is trying to research a way to avoid the merge. So neither of the twins have to kill the other. So yeah, the twins don't know about that, which will be a problem later. Josie showers all the dirt off of her. She runs into Penelope outside of the showers. They have this very heated exchange. Josie says, I hate you. Penelope says, I know. And then they smooch. They kiss. Hope and Raphael reconnect and they start dancing in the living room. Raphael is really just being ping-ponged between all of the girls. He's literally connected with Red to all of them. Hope's like, okay, maybe you were right about having friends, because now she has like a little super squad with MG and Penelope. So now it's time for the twins to euthanize their biomom. It is like one of the saddest scenes in the show. And like the fact that it's like episode 6, like that's kind of crazy. They essentially kill their mom on their birthday. It is quite horrible and tragic, but she is going back to peace. Rest in peace, Joe Laughlin, yet again. You were fun for the one episode we had you back. We did have Jeremy and Matt do like little cameos, but this is the first big Vampire Diaries cameo that we get in Legacies. And there's something really interesting happening here because Legacies is trying to form its own identity as a new show, but they're also relying on fan service and these fan favorites from the Vampire Diaries coming back so they can get people to watch. And one thing people will fall victim to is that Legacies loves to bait people with cameos. So like they'll bring up Caroline a lot and they'll bring up Klaus a lot and people were like, oh my God, are they going to show up? And if there's one thing that Vampire Diaries fans love is just like one little crumb and they'll just like hold on to it. I will say, like, admittedly, this is an episode where it works. This episode is emotional and it does make sense within like the context of the show. And so the show is called Legacies, right? And we have these legacies of the Vampire Diaries universe, yet we still don't really see a lot of the backstory or the lore that kind of connects it to the other universe when the legacies are right there, you know? But instead, we end up focusing on many other things that really do not matter and are not as interesting. This episode, episode 6, is a highlight. So the episode ends with Alaric in the cemetery vowing to kill whoever caused this trauma to resurface with Joe. And then we see this guy roll up. He has a British accent and he introduces himself as the necromancer. Think villain of a Shakespeare play. He's very theatrical. And while he kind of like goes through his whole thing of introducing himself, Alaric laughs in his face and hits him on the head with a shovel. End of episode. Episode 7, mid-season finale. Death keeps knocking on my door. I feel like every episode that I've covered, there's been something going on at the school. There's some event always. So like there was the football game, election day, a birthday party. This episode is Remembrance Day. So this is where they write letters to their loved ones that are dead. Every year, Dorian takes Remembrance Day off. He literally tells Alaric and says, don't bother me for 24 hours. Deal with your mess. I'll be back tomorrow. And honestly, good for him for getting out of the chaos that is this school. Raphael is writing a letter to his dead girlfriend, Cassie, when she literally walks through the door. Cassie's back. The necromancer has resurrected Raphael's ex-girlfriend, Cassie. Also, just want to add the needle drop here is Lovely by Billie Eilish. Truly a different time before they probably charged a gazillion amount of dollars to put her songs in shows. They tell Cassie that she's died, she's been resurrected, and she obviously doesn't take that very well. I will say this entire episode, Alaric is being super insensitive to Raphael about this whole thing. Raphael is a teenager. He's grieving his girlfriend. He is responsible for her death, has come back to life. Like, let the man like have a range of emotions. But Alaric is very, very unforgiving about what's happening here. He says all the things he does under the guise of like, oh, this just happened to me. Like, don't fall for it. But like, he's being a dick. I hate him. So the necromancer is kind of locked up now. He is of prime interest to Hope because, as we recall, Hope has a lot of dead loved ones, and she specifically wants to know about her dad and kind of like how he's doing and like if he regrets his choices of sacrificing himself for her. A little lore here, if you care about that, about how Klaus Michelson, the great evil, died. Back in the originals, Hope, as a child, was possessed by this evil magical spirit called the Hollow. It was like killing her and wanted to take her power to like rule the world. And so Klaus enlisted the help of the twins actually when they were younger, and they were able to like magically implant the Hollow's spirit from Hope to Klaus. And so Klaus had the whole Hollow spirit in him, and then he essentially killed himself along with his brother. They had like a little suicide pact going on. When Klaus died, the Hollow spirit went away, and so that was no longer a threat to Hope. Hope and the necromancer actually want to find out like what's going on with why the necromancer wants the knife and who wants it. They are going to do a head dive. It is exactly what it sounds like, just like kind of implanting your mind in somebody else's, so Hope can access the necromancer's memory of like what happened with Malivore. And she needs a vampire to do this, so she enlists the help of MG, and they are doing it against Alaric's wishes. Alaric does not know. So they do the head dive, and they actually end up in Rousseau's, which is a bar in New Orleans that is a prominent spot in the originals. And we find out that the necromancer actually knew Klaus, and they were drinking buddies. And so now Hope is like super interested in this whole thing because she wants to know about her dad. Again, the show loves to just rub a Klaus mention in the audience's face. And this will happen frequently. It is important to note because it's such a big part of Hope's character, but it is more about fan service than any actual meaningful engagement in her character. So while this head dive is happening, the necromancer pulls a fast one on Hope and actually traps her in his mind. And so that's an issue. Hope is now trapped in his subconscious. And MG, because he's like never done a head dive before, but also because he's kind of weak, he doesn't really know what to do or how to help. So he tattles and tells Alaric. Hope and Alaric have a big argument about this whole thing. They kind of go like tit for tat. Alaric is like, the necromancer can haunt you with all the people that you've killed, which whoa. And then Hope calls him an alcoholic, which is true. He calls her reckless. She ends the whole thing with, don't play disappointed dad because you're not my father, which is so true. Also, I will note that it is very hypocritical of Alaric to be upset with Hope that she is negotiating with the necromancer, because just last episode, Alaric was very ready to give the knife to Joe to save his daughter. He literally does it all the time, and he gets mad at everybody else for doing the same things that he would. So remember how Cassie is alive? So her whole reason for being here is we finally find out like what exactly happened that caused the car accident that led to her death. And we find out that Raphael lost a track race. He thought that his girlfriend was flirting with the guy that beat him. And so he's doubly angry, and he picked a fight with Cassie, which caused him to have road rage, drive recklessly, and crash the car. Cassie actually forgives Raph. So that's very like healing, I think. Now, remember, MG is weak and he failed the head dive. Well, that is because he's been drinking the animal blood that is supplied by the Salvatore School, right? He enlists the help of Caleb to help him drink human blood so he can be stronger, so he doesn't feel as helpless as he did when Hope got stuck in the necromancer's mind. Caleb takes MG to the cemetery where people are already mourning, which is crazy. MG feeds on somebody, and it turns out that MG loves blood. And I mean like loves blood in like a ripper way. He's like biting off this guy's neck, and Dorian, poor Dorian, on his day off has to vervain MG. And we find out that Dorian's family, who he remembers every day on Remembrance Day, and the reason he takes off, was killed by Stefan Salvatore, Ripper Stefan Salvatore. And mind you, there's the Stefan Salvatore Memorial Library in the Salvatore boarding school. It is very strong of Dorian, actually, to work in a place named after someone who killed his family. So just like Stefan, MG has Ripper tendencies. And Rippers pretty much like love blood and like can't stop. And they like have an insatiable hunger, like even more insatiable than like regular vampires. Some more Malivore lore is dropped. We find out that the knife is one of 3 keys that sealed Malivore. And when they return home, Malivore can be unlocked to consume everything in its path. The necromancer's telling Hope this, and then we actually find out that while Hope was trapped in the necromancer's mind, he controlled Cassie to get the knife that Dorian hid. He used a Bennett witch buried in the cemetery to transport the knife to Malivore. So now one of the 3 keys has been unlocked, and Cassie has gone back to peace and is dead again. And the knife is now out of the picture. So even though the necromancer has absolutely manipulated Hope, he does uphold his end of the deal. And he tells her that her dad, Klaus, watches over her every day, died with love in his heart, and does not regret his choice. And he also tells her that he won't find peace until she does. She kind of has to work on that, but she's pretty satisfied with that answer. Then the necromancer kind of disappears because the knife has been returned to Malivore. So remember 2 episodes ago, Hope gave Landon a bracelet that's like an SOS bracelet. So the episode ends with Hope's bracelet that is tied to Landon's. It's now glowing. So that means Landon is in trouble. And then we see a shot of security cameras over like kind of like this black pit of sludge. And then we see the knife kind of get dropped into it. And then whoever's behind the security cameras has a picture of Landon and his mom. We just went through a whole episode without mentioning the twins. So if you're wondering where the twins are, this is the start of a 3-episode run where the twins are just not in the show. And it's actually kind of crazy that they don't mention them at all in episode 7, despite the immense trauma that they went through last episode. So one thing that this show loves to do is whenever something traumatic happens to the twins, they ship them off to Europe with Caroline as some sort of like Europe therapy. It is a way for them to keep Caroline involved in the narrative and not make her look like an absentee mom, because like it literally makes no sense that like she's not around, besides the fact that like Candace King isn't acting in the show. So that's one reason why they do it. And then another reason, it's just like lazy writing, an excuse for them to do any meaningful character work off screen. Like they come back from Europe and they're like, okay, I guess we're fine. You know, we killed our bio mom. She came back to life and then we killed her, but we're fine now. We were in Europe. It's fine. It's kind of like how like back in like the olden days, like if you were sick, they'd just be like, go outside for a little bit, you know, like go to the country and like you'd be fine. Like that's what happens with the twins. So yeah, we don't see them again till episode 10. And it's actually really funny because it's also like exam season between like these couple next episodes, and like they still have to take them. So they're in Europe and they're doing Europe therapy and they also have to take exams. So that's episode 7. Okay, we're halfway through it on episode 8. I've been filming this for 3 hours and I feel like I'm in like a purgatory that exists outside of time and space. But we're gonna keep going. Okay, where's my stick? Where's my stick? Oh my God, it's all the way over there. Episode 8. Maybe I should start from the end. Now, I haven't mentioned Landon in a bit. Last time we saw him was episode 5, and he was on his way to New Orleans after kissing Hope at the bus stop. But now we know he's in trouble. So let's find out what he's been up to. This is a Landon-centric episode. Kill me now. This is like a very contained episode in terms of plot lines and characters. It's literally Landon, Hope, and Alaric, and like 2 other people that we meet, and that's it. Hope got the distress signal, and surprise, surprise, Hope is going after Landon, and she's trying to sneak out in the middle of the night. Alaric catches her, threatens her with suspension, which is actually very funny because without Hope, how would you defeat the monsters? They end up going together on this little road trip to go find Landon. Landon is now in Kansas, and he's looking for his mom, and he found her. Her name is Selah, and she works at a coffee shop. So he's been like going to this coffee shop all the time, and she's like, what is up with you? He's like, I think you're my mom. Landon goes to her house and they're talking. She gives him a sandwich. He eats the sandwich. Turns out she drugged the sandwich. She is seemingly going to torture him with an iron, and she doesn't believe that he's her son, and she's like, what do you want from me? The monsters start coming after Landon again, and a monster shows up at Selah's house. So that means Landon has touched another key, pretty much, because he touched the key with a knife, and that's when the monster started coming. So that means he's activated another lock. Selah kills the monster. They end up at a motel. He tells her about Hope, and for some reason, at that moment, she finally realizes that, okay, maybe he is my son. Alaric and Hope pull up to Selah's house and it has been quarantined off. And there is a gas leak, which is code for they're trying to cover something up. And we meet this guy. We will later find out his name is Clark, but we don't really know him yet. They just know him as the gas leak guy. Selah's house is a bust. Eventually, Hope and Alaric find Landon. Selah has a gun pointed at the door. And then Hope gets the gun back with her magic and is now pointing the gun at Selah. And she's like, I will shoot you if you don't tell me where Landon is, which, whoa. So here is another lore dump about Selah. So Selah was recruited by an intelligence organization that guards the pit to Malivore. Her job was to track down monsters and bring them back to headquarters so they can get thrown into the pit. She kind of wanted to know what was happening because she knew that she was doing these jobs, but as soon as she brought them back to headquarters, she would forget about these monsters. And so that was what Malivore was. So she figured out that her memory was being erased. And so when she figured out all of that, her employers tossed her into Malivore. And so she was forgotten. And you may be saying, when did Selah have time to have Landon? Well, while she was in Malivore, she became pregnant. And so then Malivore spit her out pregnant. Let me say that again. Selah, Landon's mom, was thrown into Malivore by her employers and thus spit out of Malivore pregnant. Why this is a method of conception in the Vampire Diaries, I don't know. Whatever happened to doppelgangers or something like that. I guess it's like their version of Immaculate Conception. By the way that the show treats Landon like he's Jesus, I guess that makes sense. I don't know. But there is an explanation later, but it's still really bad. So just don't hold your breath. The positives of getting thrown into Malivore, she was forgotten, so she was able to roam free and people weren't trying to capture her anymore. Selah tells this to Alaric. Meanwhile, Hope and Landon have a heart-to-heart, and Hope realizes, oh my god, I really care about him. They make out on the bed. Alaric walks in on them. They fall off the bed. Landon promises to never hurt Hope again. I'm going to hold Landon to this promise. Remember that. Remember that. Selah, newly becoming a mother to Landon, decides to abandon Landon again. She says that his life will be better off without her. And not only is she going to abandon him, but she is going to jump into Malivore to escape the emotional responsibility of abandoning her son yet again. He can't be upset that she abandoned him because he can't remember her. Hope sees that she's trying to do this, and then she tranquilizes Hope. Hope is tranked in the parking lot, and something is glowing in Landon's bag. And that something is this urn that he touched in Selah's house. So that is the next key for Malivore. A merman emerges from the hotel bathtub and is now after the urn. The one good thing about the monsters in this show is that they really held no budget back. They put their all into making these monsters and they look really cool. Was it at the expense of Hope Michelson wearing the same H&M top for 3 episodes in a row? Yes, but the monsters do look cool. You have to admit that. So Hope wakes up from getting tranked in the parking lot. She bounces back quick. And at first they're like, let's kill the monster. But Hope's actually like, no, I'm done playing these games. And she takes Landon's bracelet, the tracking bracelet, and puts it in the urn so they can track where the Malivore pit is, which is very smart of her, actually. They pull up to the gate of the facility, and the facility is called Triad, which that will be important later. And the merman is with the urn in the field, between the fence and between the building. And they're chasing the merman, and the merman stops in the middle of the field because he has stepped on a landmine, and the merman explodes. Yep. Merman explodes. Everyone kind of just gets pushed back, and now everyone's unconscious. Selah makes her way inside Triad, kills a bunch of security guards, and jumps into the Malivore pit. So Selah has been forgotten yet again. Who is Selah? I don't know. So now it's the next morning, and Landon and Alaric wake up, and they have forgotten everything. They don't know why they're there. They don't know where they are, because everything attached to their journey had to do with Selah. And because we don't know who Selah is anymore, they don't know what's going on. But Hope remembers. Hope remembers Selah. Hope is immune to the forgetting. Hope has retained her memories of Selah. Landon and Alaric have not. Interesting. Landon goes back to the school, so the vote means nothing. I love when this show does things and makes them seem like a big deal, only to reverse them a couple episodes later. Love that. Hope and Landon are now official. Hope asks him to be her boyfriend. Whatever. Episode ends with Hope telling Alaric about the journey. She's like, why can I remember and you can't? And also, she took the urn back. So now the monsters are coming to the school again. The last thing we see of this episode is the gas leak guy, Clark. It turns out he works for Triad and he knows that Sayla fell into the pit. He doesn't know who she is, but he sees the picture that Landon had of him and his mom floating on the top of the black tar, which okay, I don't know how this gravity works then. And then he also just kicks some random Triad scientist into the pit for no reason. He's kind of evil. Episode ends. Now time for episode 9, What Was Hope Doing in Your Dreams? So the deal with episodes 9 and 10 of the first season of Legacies they are filler episodes. What happened in season 1 was they got a 13 episode order, but then halfway through their season, they got an extended run, so they got 3 episodes added in, and so they already planned the season, and so they just added these 2 in the middle to just be filler because they had extra episodes, but they couldn't really mess with the plot. And I put plots in quotes because the plot is so full of holes, it's like Swiss cheese. They kind of just came up with these monsters to have things happen, but it has no actual stake on the plot because most of the stuff that happens in these next 2 episodes are in dreams. The boys get one, the girls get one. Gender equality. I'll let you guess which one's the better one. First, we do have to talk about the boys episode, and I'm gonna try and go through this as quickly as possible. So this episode starts with this woman in a black dress, and she's haunting people in their sleep. The first victim is Pedro. Let this kid rest, please. This episode has to do with nightmares, so a lot of the scenes will be something really crazy happening, and then they'll wake up and it's all a dream. It is still exam season, so monsters are coming and the kids still have to study for their exams, which sucks. There is the part where yes, this is a school, so it's realistic that they have exams, but also these kids are never in class. They are never learning anything. Not there's anything to learn because Alaric prevents them from learning anything useful. Of course, a nightmare demon is haunting the school when everyone's pulling all-nighters trying to study for their finals. And so Rolf is studying, even though he's been at the school for a couple weeks and he has to take exams apparently. Rolf is studying and he falls asleep. We see a scene where Hope wakes him up from sleeping and they start flirting a little bit. And then they kiss. Hope and Raphael kiss. Remember, I said there have been flirty vibes and tension between them for the past couple episodes. So that wasn't real. That was a dream. So then it turns into a nightmare where Rolf's ex-abusive foster dad comes out and hits him. The night hag wants the urn. She says it to him in the dream. And then because he got hit in the dream, Raphael has gotten injured in real life. So the good news is the monster can only hurt them when they're sleeping, like Freddy Krueger. But the bad thing is they have to stay awake. And again, they're studying for finals. It's this whole thing. So at one point, they do start feeding the kids this bewitched coffee that will keep them up. And I feel like parents would not approve of that. The main thing with Hope this episode is that she is lying to Landon about what happened with the mom, and then she also hid the urn somewhere. Landon has a dream where he's taking an exam, even though it's his first day at school, which is so real because I've had those dreams. Even though I'm removed from academia, I still have dreams where I have to take a calculus test, and I'm I haven't studied in so long, so I get it. And then he's in his underwear in the dream. It's this whole thing. And actually, Landon is quite self-aware in the dream, and he actually stabbed himself with a pencil to wake up. Now Landon has been hurt because of the monster, and reasonably being a good girlfriend, Hope is you should evacuate with everyone else so you don't get hurt. And Landon says no. Landon always tries to be of help, but then that ends up putting him at risk, which then makes Hope save him. But then that deprioritizes the real issue that got Landon hurt in the first place. So really, he is much better off away from danger so Hope can save the day. But he loves to feel wanted and needed. And honestly, he just I think he kind of just likes the attention. He has no powers, and he has 2 people who are always worrying about his safety because they love him. And he has no regard for how that makes them feel. And he's well, I'm not leaving unless Hope is leaving. And obviously Hope isn't going to leave, you idiot, because she's the one who's going to save the day. If it sounds like I'm repeating the same beats, that's just because that's how the show is. They replay this dynamic all the time. There's never anything interesting and new with Hope and Landon. It's always the same. Hope and Raphael are trying to stay awake, and they go spar in the gym. Again, there's tension. We know Raphael likes Hope. Raph pretty much tells Hope that it's not okay to lie to someone to protect them. But then again, he's lying about his feelings for Hope. We need to work on that. We need to look inwards. Landon is actually the one to discover that the thing that they thought was a night hag was actually a shape-shifting demon presenting as that. So Landon's actually really good at research, and I think he should just stay in the library with the books. And I think that's what he does best in this show, but he loves to try and fight even though he has no superpowers. And so then that just gets him in a lot of messes. Alaric has a dream where he takes the urn and drives it away from the school to protect the students, But like I said, it is a dream. So I think it's hilarious that like a real Alaric would never do that to protect his kids. He drives himself into a tree to wake up from the dream. And remember, if you get hurt in the dream, you get hurt in real life. So now he has like incredible blunt force trauma to every part of his body because he has driven into a tree. So while Alaric is sleeping in his dream, Hope comes up with a plan with the boys, Raph, Landon, MG, and Caleb, where they are going to fall asleep and lure the demon out and kind of like pull it out of the dream reality into their own. So now I'm going to go through all the dreams that the guys are having. Caleb's dream, he is tied up in a straitjacket and has a muzzle on him like he's Hannibal Lecter. And there's a TV screen saying vampires are bad, vampires are evil. So that's playing on his like species superiority. Roth's dream is him transforming into a wolf in the middle of the woods, and Hope comes to help him out, and he's feeling guilty that he likes his brother's girlfriend. Remember, we found out that he's a ripper. So MG is feeding on a bunch of people in the kitchen, and there's like a bunch of dead bodies everywhere, and he beheads this one girl because he can't control his bloodlust. Landon is back in his classroom dream, and he's self-aware again, and then like the walls start closing in on him because he's claustrophobic, but then he's the one that is able to pull the dream demon out into reality. Before they went to sleep, Hope told Landon the wrong location of where the urn was so it could get planted in the shapeshifter's mind. And so then that leads Hope to fight the demon all by herself. And mind you, she has 2 vampires and a werewolf at her disposal. And they're like ready to help. They're like, okay, like we're going to fight. And Hope goes, stand back, guys. I got this. And she takes the demon head on. She doesn't let these guys help. And then she almost gets choked out by the shapeshifter until Alaric wakes up from his dream and apparently can walk, even though he drove his Jeep into a tree. He wakes up, tosses her some arrows, and then she plunges the arrows into the dream demon's eyes. It is a very ridiculous fight. It's these 4 guys are just standing around doing nothing. I mean, I understand why Landon's not doing anything, but like these other guys, like Hope, let them help you. See this again, like, is it self-imposed or like what are the writers doing? After the events of this, remember Raph is struggling with his feelings for Hope. Hope and Raphael talk. He like randomly just drops that he traveled somewhere to go beat up one of Landon's abusive foster dads, which I feel like that's illegal. Someone can check on that for me, but I think that's a crime to travel with the intention of beating someone up. But then he says that him and Hope can't have deep conversations anymore. He doesn't say this to her, but like it's because he's worried that like his feelings will develop more the more he talks to her. Landon, MG, and Caleb are now bros, and they're like freestyle rapping in one of their rooms. You may be saying, where is the musical episode? Because we literally have a Hamilton cast member in the cast. Just you wait. Hope and Landon have another like deep conversation, and Landon's like, you can keep your secrets and I'll just like have to earn your trust and I'm gonna work towards it. It would be really grand and like really nice and like a nice proclamation from Landon if he didn't ruin it by saying, I'm gonna be the guy who always fights to find you again. What is our Landon leaving counter at, you may ask? The fact that we even have it? I think it's so rich coming from him. The fact that he leaves Hope at every turn. And actually, it's the other way around. Hope always has to find him. Landon, you're actually not finding Hope. She stays stationary. She's always at school. You know where to find her. It's you that's always going around to different places, crossing state lines, just to escape any responsibility for your actions. This episode ends with, remember Hector and Maria, Raphael and Landon's ex-foster parents? Well, Clark, or as we know him just as Triad Guy, knocks on their door and pretends to be CPS and asks them questions about Landon. All they say is he's been adopted by a very wonderful family in Virginia. And I mean it. That's all they say because they've been compelled to only reveal that information about them. And so Clark is like, okay, there's something supernatural and fishy going on. He's going to look into that. Next episode, episode 10, there's a world where your dreams come true. This is the girls filler episode that we get. Lizzie and Josie are back from their court-ordered therapy in Europe. This week's monster is a Ginny called Abla. She is blue and grants wishes. We're going to put a Malivore symbol on her. If you're wondering why some monsters are on here and some aren't, I had creative license. Some of them are more important than others. I know I said last episode was a filler episode, but this one is the very definition of a filler because everything that happens is in alternate universes. So we start back from square one. This episode has no effect on the plot whatsoever, but it is very fun. I really like this episode. I feel like fillers are like a lost art in TV nowadays because everything is so tight with streaming. Also unique about this episode is sometimes the title card will change for the show. And so for this episode, it says Lizzie Saltzman's Legacies, which is really fun. Also, I will note that this is the episode title that I put on my graduation cap for high school. I put There's a World Where Your Dreams Come True. And this is also what got me sent the free hoodie because I posted it because they were like, show your Legacies art. And I was like, I put an episode title on my grad cap and they sent me the hoodie. So these wishes all stem from Lizzie being jealous of Hope, which we know. And this is very literally a copy and paste of the Buffy episode where Cordelia makes some wishes. So her first wish is, I wish Hope never came to this school. With Hope not at the school, Alaric actually pays attention to his daughters and they train at the dock with him, which is something that Hope and Alaric do a lot. We kind of get a rehash of the pilot, but instead of Raphael being the new student, it's Jed. And so Lizzie and Josie do their whole tour guide bit. Important to note is that Lizzie is like conscious of like the previous realities. They get into the school and the school is dirty, cobwebs everywhere, very unkept. And the reason the school is poor and they don't have any money is because Hope doesn't go to the school. Klaus never writes Caroline a check at the end of the Vampire Diaries to fund the school. Alaric and Caroline build the school and Klaus is like, oh my God, I'm probably going to send my daughter there. That's a very noble cause. And also because like Klaus and Caroline had a thing. Without Hope, you don't get Klaus giving them the money, and so they're not rich anymore. Which is so funny because Alaric loves to shit on Klaus all the time when the school wouldn't be what it is without Klaus. This episode is fan service central. They just start like name dropping everybody. So they say Damon and Elena has a kid. One of the good things to come out of this episode is we do find out how they recruit new students. Cause like, I don't know about you, but I was wondering in the pilot, like how did they know that Raphael was turning into a werewolf like that day? And like, how did they know where to find him? So it turns out that they use this locator globe that Hope has spelled. She came up with the spell that whenever a new supernatural kid taps into their powers for the first time, there is a light that like gets emitted on the globe. And so the bigger the light, the more powerful. Lizzie uses the same spell that Hope does, and they spin the globe, and there is a very big dot in none other than New Orleans, Louisiana. And so Josie, Lizzie, and Alaric go to New Orleans into Rousseau's, and who do they find? Fully activated tribrid Hope Michelson. She is a vampire in this. Like she's, I think there's like 20 bodies in Rousseau's. Like she's been feeding. I guess here they're implying that Hope would have died and been ruthless if it wasn't for Alaric, which okay. So they recruit Hope to come to the school. The fact that she's a tribrid is upgrading their status, and now people are going to want to come to the school. And Alaric is now happy because the school is back in business. But now he is back to neglecting his daughters. And so Lizzie's like, damn, we're back to square one. So this is when Lizzie makes her second wish. The second wish is that she wishes there was never a boarding school to begin with. In this universe, with no Salvatore boarding school, Alaric is back at the high school working as a teacher, but he's a drunk teacher. So he doesn't really know what's going on. Likewise, Lizzie and Josie go to the public school. However, there is a role reversal here. Josie Saltzman, she got like some pigtails on. She is the popular twin and Lizzie is the loser, which is so interesting. Also in this universe, back from the dead are Dana and Connor, no longer dead, no longer monsters. And get this, Josie and Connor are dating, and Dana and Josie are best friends on the cheer team. Also, something to note is this episode, everyone is incredibly ableist to Lizzie. It is like really bad. I don't know why they just like really hounded on that. Some things that they do, they suggest her breakdowns are for attention. They blame her for her dad's alcoholism. Her mental health is the reason that he drinks so much. And in this episode, Josie, because she's popular, she's no longer a pushover and she is standing up for herself, but she's really just being mean the whole time. I mean, like a lot of the times they do use Lizzie's mental health as like the butt of the joke for this show. In this episode, it's just like truly horrible. And again, like they're not interested in doing the work and like really kind of investigating it or even trying to explain to us what it is. Just besides the fact that like the episodes are genetic. Like, okay, whatever. So again, more fan service. They say that Stephanie Salvatore's dad gave Alaric a watch with magic in it. Josie wants the watch so she can siphon it and show Connor that she's a witch, and then she's gonna have sex with Connor tonight. Interesting to note is that Dana and Connor will cheat with each other in every timeline because Lizzie sees it and tells Josie, and Josie doesn't believe her. So Lizzie has a crash out, siphons the watch magic, kind of like blows out all the lights in the hallway, and does expose them as being witches. Josie tells her, I hate you, for kind of ruining her night. So now Alaric, Josie, and Lizzie have to flee the school. But then a spiffy convertible pops up, and who comes out of the door? None other than Hope Michelson, and also Caleb and Pedro and Jed. And they're all wearing like this black leather one pieces. She says that she is from the Michelson boarding school, which is literally the same building where the Salvatore boarding school is. And so actually, you might be saying like, whoa, they work really fast because like Lizzie just revealed the powers. Actually, they want Alaric to be the new headmaster of the Michelson boarding school because Klaus Michelson is alive in this universe, and he is opening a branch in Europe. And so they want Alaric to be the new headmaster of the like American branch. The lore in this universe is because the Salvatore boarding school doesn't exist, Klaus actually builds the school himself so Hope can have like a nice place to be. And I love how this implies that actually Alaric Saltzman killed Klaus by establishing the Salvatore boarding school. So now again, Hope has infiltrated Lizzie's reality. Abla, the Ginny, she points out everyone else is having a great life with Hope because Alaric's happy that he now has a purpose. And get this, Josie Saltzman, in this universe at least, is flirting with Hope. Hope puts her hand on Josie's thigh. They were giving each other eyes in the hallway. Hope's for Hosey. So now Hope has infiltrated her reality again, and so Lizzie now gets her third wish, where she says, I wish Hope Michelson never existed. So I could take her off the wall, but I think that would cause many problems. So Hope Michelson does not exist. Who is Hope Michelson? I don't know. She makes this wish, and she enters this apocalyptic world where there are triad wanted posters plastered everywhere, and they are looking for supernaturals. People like Klaus and Emma and MG and Raph are on these posters. Everyone but Klaus has their eyes scratched out, meaning that Triad has gotten to them. And so in this world, MG is dead. In this world, Raphael is dead. Emma is dead. Rest in peace to all of those people. See what you've done, Lizzie Saltzman? Lizzie wakes up in this reality and she's with Caleb and Jed, and they're at this like bus stop, and they're like, you told us you could take us to Alaric. So they get to the Salvatore boarding school. Very depressing. Like it's like a hideout for like these supernatural people. And Penelope is there, and they're hosting a funeral because Josie Saltzman is also dead in this reality. Rest in peace, Josie Saltzman, my queen. We find out that the whole setting for this apocalyptic world is that Caroline and Klaus have linked up, and they are running from Triad, like the government, and they are enemies of the state. They say that Klaus turned off his humanity 2 years ago and kind of started a war between the supernaturals and the humans. My problem with this plotline, not only is it fan service to have Caroline together in this alternate universe, but also it was established in the Vampire Diaries by none other than Maggie from The Walking Dead, that there's a point in a vampire's life where like if you get old enough, you can't turn your humanity off. Like you can do it if you're like kind of young. And like I say young because like Stefan would do it and he was like 180 years old. But like I feel like once you reach like over 500, like you can't do it. And Klaus was 1,000 years old. So he could not have turned off his humanity. So it doesn't make any sense, but whatever. So now the people at the school are prepping for this really big fight against Triad. Alaric tells Lizzie about the merge. In this universe, somebody told Lizzie about the merge. She had an episode and she saw her sister Josie as her competition. And so she killed her. At first, Lizzie's like, oh my God, I'm stuck here because I used 3 wishes and like, that's all I get. Abla's like, who told you only get 3 wishes? It's just that like, I can control what I grant. And like, I'm not going to grant you to reset the world unless you give me the urn. Remember? The monsters want the urn. And Lizzie's like, well, I'm not going to do that. She has to really like dig deep to figure out like how she's going to save this. So Lizzie's looking for a loophole, and she realizes that The genie can't do anything unless a person wishes it to happen. So Lizzie's last wish is she wishes that Abla never met the monster that took her to Malivore. And so yes, this will reset the world, but also Lizzie will not remember the alternate universes, meaning Lizzie will not remember the merge. And not only will she not remember, but like deep down, she'll kind of remember. And so they say that like it'll kind of drive her crazy. The fact that like she knows something, but like she doesn't know exactly what. The wish works. Abla's like, oh my God, yay, I'm free. Everything resets. So Raphael is alive. MG is alive. Emma alive. Dana dead. Josie alive. Connor dead. And then Klaus dead. May he rest in peace. And the hilarious thing about this is they do all of this. They send Lizzie through all of these alternate realities and she learns absolutely nothing from this. Like, not only does she not remember, but like the fact that like she's supposed to remember deep down, like that never comes back. Again, this episode, truly filler. Oh, also Hope is back, obviously. So now we're up to episode 11. We're going to need a spotlight. Remember how I was talking about a musical episode? In this episode, Salvatore Boarding School is putting on a talent show. It's not quite a musical episode, I will say, but don't fret. That is coming eventually. You know, sometimes shows will just do a musical episode and have everyone sing because their cast can sing. And honestly, I respect that. I respect it. So right now, the urn is at the mill and they have like this barrier spell around it and also kind of an alarm to detect whenever something like goes towards it. Alaric, Dorian, and Hope wake up in the middle of the night and they find that the alarm has been tripped and they see a unicorn out there. Yep, we have unicorns now in the Vampire Diaries. And Hope's like, oh my God, we should keep it alive. It's really cute. Also, the fact that like we have one monster trapped and if the monster isn't hurting us actively, no other monster will come. So like, why are we going to kill it, right? We see that a slug comes out of the ear of the unicorn and hitches a ride back to the school on Hope's boot. Hope goes back to sleep. She wakes up and she is an entirely different person. She has a very sunny disposition. She's very happy. Remember, Hope has a lot of trauma. Hope is always sad. And so she's like smiling through the halls and everyone's like, girl, what is wrong with you? I think Josie says like, did Emma slip you happy pills? Hope's like, no, I just feel good. Again, the twins are back from their European mandated therapy and Lizzie has returned with a bracelet that shocks her whenever she says something mean. It's supposed to control her attitude. It's literally like a dog collar. It's kind of crazy. Also, something funny to note is Josie tells Landon welcome back because Landon has come back since they've been in Europe. And Landon looks at her straight in the face and goes, didn't you vote me out? Which is true. But I think that's hilarious. Again, Hope has a sunny disposition and she is actually conversing with people, which is crazy. She's enjoying milkshakes with the witches on the stairs. Josie is very confused. Josie's like, what's going on with you? She's also using Hope to hide from Penelope. However, it doesn't really work because Josie's quite tall and Hope is quite short, so she can't really hide behind her. Penelope goes to her and gives her this note that she's supposed to read, and Josie just doesn't want to read it. Hope and Josie hug for some reason, and actually the slug transfers from Hope to Josie. So now Josie's infected. We find out that every year the witches perform the same thing at the talent show. The talent show is like species by species, so everyone kind of does their own performance. And the witches do the same thing every year. Think like Mean Girls Christmas Canes performance, kind of like that. And Josie is infected with a slug, and so she has this bright idea that she's like, I actually want to perform something new. And actually, everyone else is down with this idea, despite Lizzie being kind of like the ringleader of it all. And she's like, no, but I don't want to. Like, we win every year. We shouldn't change. Raphael, remember Raphael likes Hope. Raphael goes to Hope's class, which is crazy. I know, they're never in class. And Raphael comes to help her out. She's doing like this paste to help heal wounds. And Ralph's like, why didn't you ask Landon to do it? And she's like, well, you'll heal if I mess up, which like, why would she mess up? And they are getting very, very close to each other. He's very sad that he can't be with her, even though he likes her a lot. And I will say, this brief scene between Hope and Raph and any other scenes that they have between the two have infinitely more chemistry than any scene that Hope has with Landon. It's ridiculous. I'm supposed to not endorse cheating between these two. Hope is still infected with the slug and she wants to perform at the talent show with her boyfriend Landon as like team other. They're trying to figure out like what their talent is together and they try baking. In this scene, Hope suggests that they take the urn somewhere, which is interesting. Then her eyes glow green. She goes to turn on the vent because they start like burning whatever they're baking, and the slug pops out of her ear after she gets shocked by the light switch. And so here we find out a little bit of lore that the unicorn actually died because the slug was in it for a decent amount of time. There's like a couple stages with like the slug infection. Stage 1 is it lowers your inhibitions, which is why Hope was so joy lucky and happy and willing to participate in the talent show. And then stage 2 makes you susceptible to suggestion, and then you can do whatever it wants. Also, it's bioluminescent, and so they can shine like blue light all around the school and see the slug trails, and then they see that it is like literally everywhere. So now it's time for the performances. The vampires, led by Caleb, who has been infected by a slug, because usually Caleb would not do a performance. Caleb sings an incredible rendition of Feeling Good. He starts off like on the piano with the spotlight on him, and then it turned into like this R&B cover, and it's really great. Remember, Chris Lee was in Hamilton. Caleb and MG and all the vampires like do like this group dance. It's really great. Chris Lee has an amazing, stunning, buttery voice. Love this performance. So that's the vampires. Now we have the werewolves and Raphael chooses to do spoken word poetry. And it is like one of the funniest things to happen this season. Of course, Hope and Landon are watching him do it. And Landon's like, he said he would never do this again. So that means he's done it before. Like, you could probably find this thing online, but I just want to quote something that he says in his spoken word poetry, where he says, "Expectation is a cancer. Oh, you can't, sir? Then who will?" Then his spoken word poetry takes a turn, and he starts talking about Hope and Landon and how he feels cast aside and how he has feelings for Hope. And then all the audience members kind of like rush them. Then Hope locks them in the auditorium. Again, bajillion plots happening. While all of that is happening, Alaric hates talent show day. So him and Emma play hooky and go day drinking. Karen David, who plays Emma Tig, has an amazing voice. She sings a great song at karaoke. Alaric asks Emma out. Emma kisses Alaric. She's seeing someone, but she kisses him anyways. More on that later. So then Dorian, who's at the school helping Hope and Landon with the slugs, calls Alaric and says that they've all been infected by slugs. And so they start electrocuting themselves, and a slug pops out of Emma, but a slug does not pop out of Alaric. So that means Emma was playing hooky because of the slug, but Alaric is playing hooky because he's just lazy and a horrible headmaster. So the entire student body is trapped in the auditorium where the talent show is taking place, except for Lizzie. And Hope and Landon see Lizzie, and they tie her up. But then they realize that she is not infected with the slug because she has her electric shock bracelet that prevents her from saying mean things. And every time she said a mean thing, she would get shocked. So that prevented a slug from infecting her. I also wanted to note that Lizzie calls Landon a thrift store hobbit in this scene. And Lizzie has amazing nicknames for Landon, and I will be using them quite frequently. Before the witch's performance, Josie and Penelope sneak out and actually don't perform. They are at the mill, which is where the urn is. And Josie siphons like the spell that prevents them from getting in there. They are going to like Thelma and Louise ride off into the sunset with the urn and return it to Malivore. They kiss again, infected by slugs. Josie says, "We're never getting back together." Boo-hoo. Right before they get to the urn, Hope shows up. Penelope is ready to fight Hope. Not before Hope freaking blasts Penelope into a wall, knocking her out. And like all the canes fall on her for the performance. So then Josie sees this. And Josie's like, "Well, you're not going to do that to my ex." And she prepares to fireball Hope. Not before Lizzie comes in, siphons the fireball. And Lizzie goes, "Answer me this. Am I a good sister?" And Josie goes, "Are you kidding? You're a terrible sister." And Josie gets shocked because Lizzie has put the shock bracelet on Josie, and the slug comes out of Josie. Josie did just call her sister a horrible sister, so they have to work that out. We find out this episode that the person Emma is seeing is Dorian. Emma and Dorian are seeing each other. So let's take account of how many love triangles there are in this show. We have Dorian, Alaric, Emma, Lizzie, Josie, Rolf, which like I don't think is happening anymore because Hope, Landon, Rolf is happening. So yeah, there's a lot. And there will only be more as more characters get added, because if there's one thing a CW teen show loves is a love triangle. So Emma comes up with a great idea to like sprinkle this magic dust that conducts electricity into where all the students are. And so pretty much like electrocute everybody to get all the slugs taken out. After this, because Rolf is no longer under the influence of the slugs, Landon comes up to him and is like, "Hey, can we talk about your spoken word poetry where you said that you had feelings for my girlfriend and you feel unwanted?" Rolf is like, "I don't know what you're talking about. Like, that was the slug. Like, I didn't really mean that. Obviously wasn't about you." And Landon's like, well, you did mention something about your brother and like your brother's girl, but okay. So they kind of just like leave that unresolved, I guess. They redo the talent show performances. So like, I guess forgetting the slug performances, Caleb and MG and the vampires decide to do a sit-in protest so they don't actually perform. The werewolves, aka Raphael and like one other person, do some like juggling. And now for the witches. Lizzie, Josie, Penelope, all the witches. Well, not really all of the witches, some of the witches. Remember how Josie wanted to do something different? Well, she performs an original song called Stepping Into the Light, and it's kind of a banger. It's really good. Josie's actress, Kaylee Kaneshiro, formerly Bryant, she has a really great voice. She just like fucking kills the song. And like the song is very like thematically tied to her character about like being in the shadows and finally stepping out into the light and like being herself and like being assertive. And she's kind of like coming into her own personhood, which is really cool. She's singing and then all the other witches are kind of like doing a cane number, but it's like really weird and awkward, but it's fine. She gets a resounding applause. Everybody loves it. And the witches win the talent show because of her. So you're thinking to yourself, Josie has sang, Caleb sang, Raphael did his spoken word poetry, and Emma sang. We're missing some people, right? Yes. Landon Kirby must sing. The best way I can describe it, Landon serenades Hope like a guy who only knows Riptide on the ukulele. He takes out his guitar and sings an original song about her. That's literally what the song is called, about her. And he's like, about those eyes. Like there's so many things working against him. It's not a good song. It goes on for far too long because unfortunately the actor that plays Landon cannot sing. And I don't know why they made him do this, but Hope is very touched by it. Hope is crying. Nobody has ever sang for her before, so she's crying and she loves it. They say it's very interesting that Landon was never infected by the slug, so we'll find out more about that later. Hope has this epiphany that maybe she can be happy all the time. And she's like, well, maybe the only thing keeping me from being happy is me. And like, girl, yeah, stop being so miserable. At the end of everything, Lizzie says that this day has taught her to just be herself. So she says that being nice has gotten her nowhere, so she's back to being mean. Again, this is what I'm talking about with the show. They just reverse character development all of the time. And the episode ends with Alaric taking a drink from his bourbon or whatever, his glass, and in the glass is a slug. And so he drinks the slug glass and he throws the urn off of a bridge. Episode 12, there's a mummy on Main Street. It is spring break. Right before spring break, Dorian and Emma go on a little date and they have a picnic and then there's beetles everywhere. So they're like, okay, this must be the work of some monster because of the urn. Remember, Alaric threw the urn off of a bridge and now it has like wandered down a river and they think it's stuck in this town and that's why these like plagues are happening. We're going on a road trip. It's spring break. So Alaric, Dorian, Emma, Hope, and the twins, and then Caleb go on this road trip. You might be saying, why is Caleb going? Well, Alaric doesn't trust Caleb to be left unsupervised because apparently all of the adults, mind you, these are the only adults that we know of in this school. Like we don't know of any other teachers. And so all of the adults are going on this trip. And so Alaric doesn't trust Caleb to be without supervision and he thinks he's going to feed on people. The spring break is not going well already because Lizzie is beefing with Hope and they're bickering because Lizzie thinks that Hope has ruined every spring break ever. She keeps making these fire puns and it's referring to when there was a fire in Hope's dorm room a couple years ago, and Lizzie says that Hope set that fire on purpose so the twins couldn't hang out with their dad. And Hope's like, why would I do that to myself? I lost half of my stuff in that fire and the only painting that she made with Klaus. Like, why would she do that to herself? Which is a great question. Again, just to note the needle drops for this episode, they are playing Fancy by Iggy Azalea. Whoa, what a blast from the past. Like, when was the last time you heard that song? Josie is car sick and she throws up in the car and she sings a little ditty on her ukulele that actually, fun fact, got produced into a full song by Quincy Faust, who plays MG. It's called Crush on You. You can stream it on Spotify if you want. The spring break crew gets to the town that we think the urn is in, and there is another plague. This time it's locusts, and Josie gets a boil. She gets stung. There's some guys in hazmat suits that show up very quickly, maybe a little too quickly. They're taking phones, and they're like kind of sorting out the mess that happens. In the FEMA tent with the quarantine is the guy from Triad, Clark, which they still don't really know his name. Hope, because she remembers what happened when they went to see Selah, remembers Clark and recognizes him from being the gas leak guy. And so she's like, well, what is the gas leak guy doing at this like FEMA tent? Hope tells Alaric about this and is like, okay, this guy is here for the urn. While they're like in the FEMA tent, Dorian is by the river with scuba equipment and he fishes out the urn from the river. Once he gets out of the river, he practically gets swatted by these people from Triad and is forced to give it up. But then while that's happening, all of the guys that are like attacking him get swarmed by locusts and a mummy comes into the picture. So the monster of the week for this episode is a mummy. Back at the tent, they now know his name is Clark. Great. He says that he knows about the Salvatore boarding school. He works for an organization that keeps monsters from the public view, aka Triad, which is where Sayla worked. He wants Hope's help to take down the mummy, and then Hope and Alaric tell everybody about Malivore. Obviously, Landon isn't there, so he doesn't know, and he doesn't know about the mom or anything like that. Caleb is forced to hang back and help Clark compel people and kind of just to play along. Obviously, Alaric doesn't want to give Clark the urn because he doesn't really know what Clark's deal is. Meanwhile, Hope, Alaric, and the twins go to Main Street, aka the episode title, There's a Mummy on Main Street, to go intercept the mummy. Alaric is armed with a crossbow, which, like, I don't know what he thought that would do when he has like 3 witches at his disposal. And it's funny because he's like in the front lines and it's like, bro, like just give them their space. I don't know what you're doing. Hope and the twins are kind of going to do that girl power thing where they're going to like join forces and kill the mummy, but they take too long and they wait a little bit too long and the mummy actually starts like choking them with the bugs. While Lizzie and Hope are indisposed, Josie does a spell to like resist the bugs from infecting her, and then she does a fire spell to incinerate the mummy. Hell yeah, Josie. While Caleb was playing along with Clark and compelling everybody, Caleb compelled this worker to take the urn and meet them at like this other location like a miles from the town so they can take the urn and like take it back to the school incognito. Problem with this is Clark has Dorian and Emma, and he is willing to trade them 2 for the urn. Alaric obviously does this. They lose the urn and now they get Dorian and Emma back. So now they're driving back to the school empty-handed. Everyone's in the car. Everyone's accounted for. This is the first time in this show, in this scene, this is the first time I've ever heard Someone You Loved by Louis Capaldi. I think one of the best songs like ever. I love this song. This was like before this song in particular, or just like him in general blew up. This is like 2019. I just felt like I discovered an artist before everybody else and I felt really cool. So I have Legacies to thank for that, I guess. So remember how Hope and Lizzie have been bickering this whole spring break about the fire in Hope's dorm room. This whole episode, Josie has kind of been an intermediary trying to, calm them and trying to get them to drop it. And at the end of the episode, we find out why. In the car ride home, Hope and Lizzie have a heart-to-heart, and Hope's like, yeah, my family also has their like mental health issues and like I'm prone to them too, so I wouldn't make fun of you for it. She says it in a very clunky way. It's like really bad dialogue. Lizzie says that Hope called her witch bipolar. Hope's like, I would never say that. And so Hope's like, who said that I said that? We find out that Josie Saltzman spread the lie. Presumably innocent Josie Saltzman. Now we're back at the school in the twins' room and Lizzie's like, why did you lie? Why did you say that? And then Hope's also in the doorway and Hope's like, yeah, I want to know too. Turns out Josie Saltzman had set the fire. Josie Saltzman set the fire in Hope's room. Remember, Josie loves a fire spell because you see this red line going from Josie to Hope? Josie had a crush on Hope back in the day. She had slipped a note under Hope's door confessing her crush. She immediately regretted it and tried to do a fire spell under the door and it set the whole room on fire. But she was only aiming for the note. She didn't mean to set the whole room on fire. And she says that she kept the crush a secret because Lizzie always goes for the things that Josie wants. So who knows if Lizzie would have gone for Hope if she knew. And what's really funny about this is that Hope is like, I lost half of my stuff in that fire, the only painting I made with my dad. But as soon as Josie says that she had a crush on Hope, Hope's doesn't care about the stuff that she lost in the fire. She's very flattered, actually. Hope's like, you had a crush on me? Josie says, of course I would. Who wouldn't? And so there's so many ships happening, but now Hosey is real. At least one-sided for now. Again, Alaric is told by a student, this time it's Caleb, saying that like, you need to allow us to use our full abilities because he spent the whole day compelling people, and because he's on animal blood, he's like drained and he's only did compulsion. So like that shouldn't take that much energy. Again, like this is the same story rehashing. People keep telling Alaric and he doesn't listen because he doesn't listen to anybody. Emma admits to Dorian that she kissed Alaric, which, like, girl, take that shit to the grave. And not only did Emma kiss Alaric, but Alaric didn't have the slug in him. And so Dorian is pissed, walks up to Alaric and punches him square in the face and says he quits, which, thank God someone did that by now. Triad has the urn, and at the end of the episode, the Triad guard is like, Mrs. G wants the urn to go to the vault. But then Clark shoots the guard and throws the urn into the pit. A second key has been unlocked. So now we only need one more key to unlock Malivore. We're almost there. Episode 13. The boy who still has a lot of good to do. Fun fact about this episode, Stefan Salvatore, he doesn't appear, but Paul Wesley directed this episode of Legacies. Again, it's spring break. Everyone that's of importance on this map, except MG, Landon, and Roth, went on that road trip. And so they get back from the road trip, and Caleb can't find MG, Hope can't find Landon, and Raphael is not in the werewolf transition space because it's a full moon. All of these boys are unaccounted for. And so everyone's like, where are they? They find Roth, like, outside of the school gates, kind of frantic. Like, he can't remember what happened. So Roth is in a wolf psychosis where he started turning during the full moon and something traumatic happened, preventing him from completing the transition. And so now he's stuck in between his wolf and human minds. And that is prohibiting him from accessing his memories. This episode is kind of like a flashback of like what happened with the boys. Why are they missing and why haven't they returned to the school? So we find out right at the beginning of spring break that Caleb asks Roth to look after MG because spring break is always kind of like a rough time for him because all the kids are going back home, but MG's parents don't invite him back. A superhero, Landon fucking Kirby, thinks it's a extraordinary idea to take MG to his family home unwelcomed and talk to his parents and find out like what's going on. Landon is projecting his need for a family and like his inability to answer the questions surrounding his mom and is like, well, MG, you have parents that exist. Like, why don't you go find out what's wrong? Like, I would give anything to do that. Which, like, okay, maybe that's you, but like, don't force that on somebody else. And Roth is telling Landon, like, drop it. Like, Landon's pushing and Roth's like, calm down. They somehow persuade MG to go to his house and we see his mom, Veronica. MG's like, oh, I want to talk to dad. And Veronica's like, well, your dad's not here. Back to present day where we're trying to figure out like where the rest of the boys are. Hope, as always, is very desperate to find Landon. She's running around the school screaming, where's Landon? Where's Landon? What happened to Landon? Right in Ralph's face. Hope makes an elixir from her mom's Crescent Wolf pack that kind of allows them to access their wolf mind because they can control their shift. And so she makes him an elixir. Emma's like, no, you are not a pharmacist. Like, I'm not giving Raphael that. He can't drink that. Like, I don't know what that's going to do to him. Roth, because he also cares about Landon, tranks Emma and allows Hope to feed him the elixir. And so now he can like remember what's going on. So back to the flashback. Raphael tells Landon off for forcing MG to come to his parents. And Landon's only defense is, well, at least MG knows the truth, which is crazy. Because Landon's full of bright ideas, he looks at the town newspaper and sees that MG's dad is giving a sermon at the church later. Landon's like, MG, we should go see your dad at the church. Let's go see your dad at the church. You want to talk to your dad, right? They end up at the church. And MG talks to his dad, the pastor who's running for mayor. And meanwhile, also, mind you, this whole time where Landon's like, MG, you should go see your dad. Let's go see your dad. Both Raphael and MG are like, no, we shouldn't do that. And like, also, we have to get back to the school because it's the night of the full moon and Raphael is going to turn into a wolf. But Landon, king of guilt tripping, pretty much guilt trips MG and says, well, if I had my parents around, I would want to ask them why they abandoned me. Yeah, so they end up at the church. MG talks to his dad and we find out that MG's dad didn't know that he was a vampire. Like, he didn't know he was alive. He thought he was just like dead. And so that's the reason that MG has never heard from him. And so Mr. Greasley, being the religious man that he is like, I need the whole world to see that you're alive and that you're a miracle. Obviously, caveat is that MG is a vampire. And MG shows his dad, a God-fearing man, that he's a vampire. And what does he do? Mr. Greasley does not take this well, and he just like runs away from him. And he's like, you're the demon, you're a devil. This whole thing ends with MG's last memory of his dad yelling at him, calling him a devil. MG compels his dad to forget ever meeting him and finding out that he's a vampire. Obviously, they did not make it back. Landon knows nothing, ever. And so Raphael is now going to turn into a werewolf in the middle of the woods. Landon has to chain him to a tree. The kicker is that Landon still views himself as a hero for helping MG get closure. Closure to an issue that Landon started in the first place. And then also, Landon thinks that now, when Raphael is chained up to a tree going to break every bone in his body, Landon thinks this is a great time to bring up Raphael's feelings for Hope. Like, what? Read the room, bro. But before that conversation can get anywhere, Raphael tells Landon to run because there's something in the woods. So now we're in present day. Caleb and Alaric are in the woods and they come across MG. MG is kind of delirious because he has been bitten by a werewolf. And in the Vampire Diaries, werewolf bites are like fatal to vampires. They make them delusional and then eventually they'll die. The good thing is about this though, is that Hope Michelson's blood is the cure to werewolf bites. Well, really it was Klaus's, but because she has Klaus's blood in her veins, she is now the cure for werewolf bites. Something important about the Salvatore boarding school is that none of the students have phones. It's 2029 and none of the schools have phones. They have one singular school phone. But the thing is, Hope and Raph have kind of like left the school to go find Landon. And so when Alaric calls the school, they're not there and he has the school phone. Also, yeah, he has the school phone. So where is your phone, mister? So yeah, the whole like no phone school bites them in the ass all the time. And this is one instance in particular. We find out that Raphael bit MG because after the whole thing with MG and his dad, MG came back to where Landon and Raphael were in the forest and he was pissed. Reasonably so, because like none of this would have happened in the first place if Landon hadn't strong-armed MG to go meet his father, right? MG's very upset. MG punches Landon because he's upset with him, which like reasonable. Thing is, MG now has Landon's blood on his hands. And remember, MG is a ripper. He loves blood. He loves human blood. And so he sees the blood on his hand, he like starts shaking and he can't control his bloodlust. And he attacks Landon. He rips into Landon's neck, like really bad, and kills him. Rest in peace. Actually, no. Landon's dead. Thank God. And at this point in the story, essentially the flashbacks have merged with present day. Like they know all the information they know. And so Hope shows up to the scene and sees Landon's dead body because Landon is dead and he's been lying on the ground for like a day. She's very distraught that he's dead. She loved him. She has that trauma of people dying on her. However, she picks herself up and does heal MG with her blood. With MG healed, him and Caleb have a heart-to-heart in the car. And essentially, MG's like, everyone's going to hate me for killing Landon. And Caleb's like, well, you're my family now. And like, they're going to have to go through me. It's a very nice scene between the two of them. If you have become a fan of MG for killing Landon, or for any other reason, this is the most depth his character ever gets. This is the extent of his backstory. We still don't know how he got turned into a vampire so young. We don't know anything. And for the rest of the show, he will be reduced to a comic book nerd. MG comes back to the woods to like gather and like take Landon's body home. And Raphael is very pissed at MG. Hope stops Raphael from fighting MG because she's like, Landon wouldn't want this, whatever. So while this is happening, Landon's body starts smoking and then it catches on fire and then his body turns to ashes. He starts to move and like emerge from the ashes. Landon Kirby stands up and is alive again. That X didn't last for long. Given all of those context clues, fire, ashes, rising up from said ashes, we have finally found out what supernatural being Landon Kirby is. Landon Kirby is a phoenix. End of episode 13. This whole time, Landon has wanted to be special, and now he is. He's a phoenix. He's like the only one of his kind and can't die. And you'd think that he would be a perfect match for Hope, who has abandonment issues and hates when people die on her. But again, we have a Landon leaving counter, and so he still manages to traumatize her all the time, even with his deaths when he comes back, but also just by the mere fact of him leaving her all the time. Personally, I think Landon should have stayed dead. I think the show would have been better if he just stayed dead. MG is innocent. I think he deserved everything that happened to him because the way he was behaving in this episode was truly insane. If Landon Kirby has 0 haters, I am dead. Just laying that out there. I remember starting this rewatch and I was like, oh, Landon's not that bad. And then as the show goes on, it just gets so much worse and worse. When I watched this episode, I was like, why can't every episode of this show be like this? It was dark and gritty and there were stakes. It really reminded me of the Vampire Diaries. This is where I want to point out that this show has a tone problem, especially in the early episodes. They're trying to find their footing and kind of be woke, but also like make jokes at Lizzie's mental health expense. Like, it's weird, kind of appealing to this younger audience, which is different from what the Vampire Diaries and the originals were doing. But then you see them market towards the younger audience and you're like, who is this for? Because then you remember, like, this whole universe has been going on for over 10 years. And like, the fans of the Vampire Diaries are getting older. And then that's why they moved on to the originals, because like that was a more mature show. But then you have Legacies, which is like regressing back to an audience age even like younger than the Vampire Diaries. So that doesn't really make sense. The real audience for the show is, like the name is, Legacies, like the people who have been fans of the originals and the Vampire Diaries. But then they're trying to appeal to this younger audience, even though you need to know like 13 seasons of lore. The true fans of the show are actually aging out of whatever tone they're trying to establish here. It's weird. And with this episode, you really see like how good it can be without the monster of the week, or at least something that's rooted in the characters that we already have. Like, because like episode 6 is a highlight, and that's because Joe was involved, and that had to do with the twins. This episode is good because it all focuses on MG, and again, that theme that we were talking about at the beginning of like nature versus nurture and like what are we capable of. I feel like the lesson here was that this show is better when the episodes focus on the characters that we already have and the actual legacies, like the name suggests, but they don't really learn from that. And they continue with the monster of the week for way too long. Took a little dinner break. This has been going on forever. Episode 14, Let's Just Finish the Dance. Long-standing tradition in this season, there is another event at the Salvatore School. This time, it is Miss Mystic Falls, and the Salvatore School is hosting. Miss Mystic Falls is like a beauty pageant that is an iconic event in Mystic Falls / the Vampire Diaries. Caroline has participated, and so has Elena, who's not on this. One thing about Miss Mystic Falls is that there is always drama. Regardless of what happens, regardless of who wins, there's always drama leading up to it and afterwards, and Legacies is no different. If you recall from last episode, Landon Kirby momentarily had an X on his picture, but now he has a flame because he's a phoenix. Hope, abandonment issues central / death trauma girl, is obviously very upset and triggered by the fact that Landon had died, but of course he's back to life. But like, she's very clingy with him now. She's having nightmares about him dying, and at one point she flings him across the room because the nightmares got so bad. Hope is bubbling on a crash out. And so they're kind of icy despite the fact that Landon has survived being eaten by MG. But to make matters worse, Hope's 90-year-old ex-vampire boyfriend Roman is back in town. He is a character from the originals. Right now, he has been working for Alaric to recruit kids to the school. He is also a former student of the Salvatore boarding school. Here is some quick backstory and lore about him from season 5. You might be saying, like, that's really weird. Like, why would they have like a 90-year-old vampire with actual like real teenagers that are vampires? Well, he kind of lied on his admissions to get into the school. They didn't know that he was like 90 years old. Hope and Roman kind of barely dated. In my mind, they didn't really date, but like they had a little fling. The main thing with Roman that you need to know is that Roman is partly responsible for the death of Hope's mother, Haley. This all came to be because Roman's mother was part of a vampire supremacist Nazi group that wanted the purity of the species. So they didn't like hybrids. And of course, both Hope's parents are hybrids, right? Werewolves and vampires. And they didn't like that, like the werewolf gene was intermingled in the vampire pool, as if vampires can procreate. They literally can't. So I don't even know why they're so upset. These Nazi vampire purists brainwashed Roman, and he played a part in kidnapping Haley when Hope had fake kidnapped her mom to get her dad's attention. Okay, so yes, Hope did kidnap her mom. She put her in a safe place, and she was going to get her back eventually as soon as her dad answered her magical phone calls. But unfortunately, Roman visited Hope in New Orleans, got inside her mind at a vulnerable time, and figured out where Haley's body was being hidden. Roman and the Nazi vampires kidnapped Haley, and that led to Haley losing her werewolf side, becoming just a regular vampire, and burning in the sun along with Roman's mom in order to save Hope from the same fate. And I still mourn Haley Marshall to this day, and I believe her death death was very incongruent with the vampire lore established. Elena Gilbert literally opened the curtains and stood in the sunlight for like 10 seconds and was on fire and she was fine. Haley Marshall goes outside for 2 seconds and she's dead. Okay. Obviously, like, Hope isn't excited to see Roman, but she also doesn't hold him responsible for Haley's death anymore. However, Landon is extremely jealous of Roman. Extremely. That'll come into play later on. Veronica Greasley, MG's mother, has come to school and she is very upset at Alaric that MG has become a murderer under Alaric's supervision. Because remember, this school is supposed to have these kids not given to their worst impulses. They're supposed to be good. Veronica is like, well, there's schools in Europe that I want you to go to. So like, leave this school and go to Europe. And MG does not want to abandon his friends. So he says no. In the midst of all the chaos of the Miss Mystic Falls pageant coming to town, MG befriends a girl named Nia, and she shares the comic book love that he does, and they talk about the Green Lantern. At this moment in the story, both Josie and Lizzie are competing in Miss Mystic Falls. However, Josie is competing in Miss Mystic Falls so she can pretty much take up a competitor slot and then throw it for Lizzie so her sister can win. She's doing this, remember, Josie, pushover, but also because she feels guilty about the lie. So yes, Lizzie is competing and Lizzie wants to win. However, do we remember Dana? Dana, who puked her guts out and was bitten by a spider and is now a shriveled up corpse. Yes, so Dana, who does not like Lizzie, right? Dana's mother, Vera, shows up to the Salvatore school wearing a Dana Remembrance button. Vera Lillian is one of the judges for Miss Mystic Falls. So that throws a wrench in Lizzie's plans because obviously Dana never had anything nice to say about Lizzie to her mother. And so Lizzie's like, well, the cards are stacked against me. I'm never going to win. Lizzie drops out of the race and you think, okay, she's going to champion her sister who is competing, right? Now, no. Lizzie decides to champion Hope Michelson. And Josie is all excited and Josie's like, oh my God, I can finally win something and my sister will help me out. And then she gets let down again because Lizzie's like, Hope, you are the one. So now is the time where they're going to rehearse the dance. If you remember from the Vampire Diaries, the simple intimacy of the near touch. Josie and Penelope are dancing together. Originally, MG was supposed to be Josie's escort, but then remember, Penelope and MG kind of have like this secret alliance to help each other out. So Penelope convinced MG to sit this one out. And Josie's like, why are you doing this? Why do you want to be my escort? Like, there has to be something else going on. And Penelope says, well, if you read the letter that I gave you 3 episodes ago, you would know. But because Josie's stubborn, she's not reading the letter. Penelope is very woke about the Miss Mystic Falls pageant and calls it archaic and helping the patriarchy, which I agree. And remember, even though Hope has inherited Lizzie's plan, Josie is still on the same mission of championing Lizzie's champion, who is Hope. And so Josie is still taking up the slot to throw in order for Hope to win. They're practicing the dance. Josie slips and falls, but actually Penelope dips her and it makes it look really cool. Elsewhere on the dance floor, Hope and Landon are also dancing together and they're really bad at it. They get into another argument because Landon can't let shit go for his life and keeps hounding on Hope about how she has somehow forgiven Roman for playing a part in her mother's death 2 years ago, but was very reluctant to forgive him about the whole knife thing when that was like, what, 4 days or something? He's like, he literally murdered your mom. And Hope's like, okay, and I've worked through it. Landon is just extremely insecure, never knows when to let things go, and honestly, who Hope forgives and why is her business and none of his. Yeah, they get into a fight. Someone needs to punch Landon again, preferably kill him again, but he'll just come back. And then she's on the brink of a magical outburst when Lizzie sees what's going on. She takes Hope to the woods and they like have a little screaming thing where Hope lets out all of her energy and like anger. Surprisingly, Landon goes to apologize to Hope about his behavior. He gets 10% of the way through when they see a statue in the garden that looks exactly like MG's mom. So now there's something in the school turning people to stone. He gets away with not apologizing because there's more pressing matters. Lizzie calls Landon a sentient jar of artisanal mayonnaise. Again, like I said, she comes up with some of the greatest insults for him, and I support her every step of the way. Just when we thought that Landon was going to have a change of heart and some semblance of common sense and decency, he has now went from on the brink of apologizing to now accusing Roman, a vampire, of turning Mrs. Grizzly to stone. I know I haven't really said a lot about vampires in the Vampire Diaries universe, but that is a power that they do not have. Vampires cannot turn people to stone, but Landon insists on interrogating Roman anyways. And so now that he's pointing fingers at people, he feels vindicated for lashing out at Hope about her dead mother. So Landon goes to interrogate Roman. They don't really say much. Actually, Roman admits that he still has feelings for Hope, but he knows that that'll never happen. And then he just tells Landon to trust Hope. Hope has inherited Lizzie's plan and everything that goes with it. And included in this plan is the dress that Lizzie was going to wear. And it is Caroline's blue dress, the iconic blue dress from the Michelson Ball. Season 3, episode 14, Dangerous Liaisons of the Vampire Diaries. Her iconic dress that makes her look like a princess. They dance to an Ed Sheeran song. They dance to Give Me Love. It's one of the best scenes in the show. And Caroline's wearing a stunning blue dress. While Landon is accusing Roman of turning Mrs. Grizzly to stone, MG and Alark are by the mill and they run into Nia. And we find out that Nia is a Gorgon. Pretty much what Medusa is. She has a head of snakes and she can turn people to stone. And so Nia is our next Malivore monster. And you may be saying, well, there's no other key to activate the monster. Well, Nia was actually sent by Clark to kidnap Landon. So Nia turns Alark to stone. Yay. And she goes to turn MG to stone, but it doesn't work. So then she just snaps his neck instead. I remember reading about the snakes on Nia's head and all the CGI that went into it. And apparently it cost an exorbitant amount of money. And so that's why they don't really bring her back after this season. Fresh off of Roman saying he still has feelings for Hope and Penelope kind of seeing Josie succumb to Lizzie's influences and stuff. An unlikely duo appears of Penelope and Landon, and they are both drinking together outside of the Miss Mystic Falls pageant. Landon literally complains about feeling special by being a phoenix, and he's like, why doesn't anyone care? And he's like, well, it turns out I'm not really special because everyone here is special. And so he's kind of getting an ounce of emotional intelligence, and he's like, I think I'm just jealous and insecure, and I should tell Hope that I'm just kind of lashing out at her. And he's like, oh, I should be honest because Hope is always honest. And then Penelope laughs in his face. Penelope laughs in his face and says, Hope is the last person you should applaud for her honesty. Why don't you ask her about what happened with your mom? How does Penelope know about that? We're going to find out. So now it's the Miss Mystic Falls pageant proper. Everyone's in their little dresses. King Princess is playing her song 1950. Love that song. Josie and Penelope are coming down the stairs and they have Josie in the most egregious bun I have ever seen. I don't know why the hair department hates her on this show, but why is she wearing that? I know she's trying to throw the competition, but please, Josie. As they're walking down the stairs, Josie lets Penelope in on the plan. And the plan is that Josie had to be good enough for the competition to make it this far, and now she's going to take out Hope's closest competitor. And that competitor is Sasha, the girl who was cocooned in the spider mill. She is fine. Her friends are dead, but she is alive and competing in Miss Mystic Falls. Love that. The plan is that Josie has to take her out, quite literally. Josie takes a fall down the stairs and takes her legs out from under her, and they're both on the floor. And mind you, this whole time while they're going down the stairs and Josie's telling her her plan, Penelope's like, what if you tried to win? I know you want to, but what if you tried to win? Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that feel nice? And Josie's like, no. Penelope's like, what are you going to do when I'm not here to fight for you? And Josie's like, well, what does that mean? And then Penelope is like, girl, if you read the letter I gave you 3 weeks ago, you would know what I'm talking about. And so finally, Josie is going to go read the letter. While that dumpster fire is brewing at the bottom of the stairs, at the top of the stairs, an even bigger dumpster fire is brewing between Hope and Landon. Landon comes in. He smells like alcohol. Landon confronts Hope about his mother and why Penelope Park says that about something with my mother. Hope cannot admit to the secret she's hiding, and so she stays silent. And what does Landon do? You guessed it. He leaves her. He leaves her at the top of the stairs at the Miss Mystic Falls pageant without an escort. Landon leaving counter numero cinco. So now Hope is having a panic attack at the top of the stairs. She doesn't have an escort anymore, and her boyfriend has just left her for a 5th time. And who swoops in but none other than Roman Sienna, and is Hope's escort and dances with her. I might add, everyone dances. And you know who's still dancing? Sasha. Josie's plan did nothing. She fell to the floor, but she didn't get injured or anything, so she's still dancing. So I don't know why Josie did that. She did it all for nothing. Josie finally reads the letter that Penelope gave her, and she finds out that Penelope is leaving the school. And Josie goes to confront Lizzie about it, and apparently Lizzie already knew. Josie is pissed that Lizzie didn't tell her. Lizzie and Penelope have beef, so Lizzie's actually very excited that Penelope is leaving, but Josie's pissed at Lizzie for keeping the secret from her, and she's actually quite sad that her ex-girlfriend is leaving the school. This is kind of like a really big fracture in the twins' relationship. Josie calls her out for not considering anybody else's feelings but her own. And it also relates back to Lizzie not giving Josie her plan to win Miss Mystic Falls, and she never even considered that Josie would want to compete and win. And so then Josie drops the bomb, which Lizzie didn't know, that the dress that Hope is wearing that was once originally Caroline's was gifted from none other than Hope's father, Klaus Michelson, which, like, we know that as Vampire Diaries fans. But Lizzie doesn't know that, and Hope doesn't know that, and she finds out from Roman's vampire hearing. He's eavesdropping on the twins' argument. Roman tells Hope that her father gave Caroline the dress, and so she's wearing a dress that her father picked out. Now she's really struggling because she's like thinking about her dad and everything like that. Now she's crying. She's crying. She also wins Miss Mystic Falls. So they crown her Miss Mystic Falls, and she's crying, and she's going to have like a panic attack. And Lizzie swoops in to comfort her and lets her cry on her shoulder. Now we have Penelope's goodbye scene. We find out that she's going to Belgium to a witch-only school. Like every relationship beat that's been happening prior to this with Penelope, Josie, and Lizzie in regards to them, she pretty much tells Josie that she's sick of watching her prioritize her sister. Penelope says that she can't wait around to see what happens next. And she's referring to the merge. That's right. Penelope knows about the merge. You might be saying, how does Penelope know about the merge? How does she know about the merge? And how does she know that Hope knows about Landon's mom? How does she know these things? Well, it turns out that Penelope, being the gossipy, messy person that she is, she spelled a bunch of pens and gave them out to the student body and staff of the Salvatore School. And these pens record what the people write with them and then transfer them into another journal that Penelope can then read. Hope was using the pens in her journal when she was, I guess, journaling about Selah. And then Alaric was writing notes about the merge with Penelope's pen. And so now Josie is in possession of this book of secrets. Josie will now be investigating what this merge is. They kiss one more time, and then Penelope walks away and we never see her again. Quite literally, she's gone for good. Remember, Nia is still on the loose, our Gorgon, and she corners Landon and tries to turn him to stone and kidnap him. But then MG comes in, uses this bell, rings it a bunch of times, and that kind of deactivates Nia's snake hair. And then they like tranquilize her. MG and Landon are even. MG has killed Landon, but Landon came back, and now MG has made up for that by saving Landon from being kidnapped. Cool. So now let's take account of like the relationships and the mess that happened after Miss Mystic Falls. Hope and Landon are on the fritz. Landon's pissed at Hope. Lizzie and Josie are very mad at each other. The twins not doing well. Penelope has left the continent and is going off to Belgium, and Josie will quite literally never see her again. The one girl that MG kind of liked, she turned out to be a monster, and now she's in the basement in a jail cell. Because of all the relationships that are on the fritz, Hope and Lizzie make a deal. Lizzie is going to help Hope apologize to Landon, and Hope is going to help Lizzie and Josie kind of not hate each other anymore. So again, Landon was on his way out of the school. As he's leaving the school, MG's mom, Veronica Greasley, she's no longer a statue in the garden, she tasers Landon and effectively kidnaps him. And it turns out Veronica works for Triad. And the Mrs. G that was referred to a couple episodes ago is Veronica Greasley. So now Landon is besides the Malivore pit tied up. Our penultimate episode of the season, episode 15, I'll tell you a story. So Landon is by the pit. Mrs. Greasley wants to throw Landon into the pit because she found out that he is a phoenix. Clark is in charge of this. However, Clark turns off the cameras and tells Landon that he wants to find the last key to unlock Malivore. Only Landon really knows what the key is because he's always activating them. There's like decoys around, and he wants to know what the real one is. And Landon's like, why would I ever help you to do that? Like, Malivore is bad. And Clark says in exchange, he'll tell him the story of his father. Now we're going to get a bunch of lore. This is a big lore episode. The story goes, 1,000 years ago, there were monsters that roamed the earth. Dragons, gargoyles, all that stuff. All the monsters that we've seen throughout this first season. Specifically, the dragon was the one that caused humans the biggest problem. A witch, a werewolf, and a vampire, and they're known as the Triad, banded together because they were no match for the dragon on their own separately, combined their blood and used black magic to create a golem capable of consuming the dragon. And so the witch, the werewolf, and the vampire made it so the golem could not attack the people who made him. So they can't attack other witches, vampires, and werewolves. This golem consumes every monster in sight, and it literally like sucks them up right into the body, just like absorbs them. As the golem consumed more monsters, it became sentient. And so when the Triad was like, okay, like that's enough, you've had enough, you've killed all the monsters, they wanted to melt him down back into mud. But he made a deal with the humans that the humans would stop the Triad from melting him down, and in exchange, he will wander the earth consuming like every monster ever. And so Landon stops Clark at the point of this story and goes, okay, so did the golem eat my dad? And Clark goes, no, actually, the golem is your dad. Malivore is your dad. Okay, now Malivore is wandering the earth, and he's lonely. And so he decides to make beings like him, other golems. However, they are imperfect. They have no powers, so they can't like consume like he can. And they're also sterile, which, okay. Turns out that Clark is one of these golems. So he is Malivore's son, an imperfect son, which makes him Landon's brother. Brothers. Eventually, Clark betrays their father, turns him in for violating nature and creating a new species. Apparently, he wasn't allowed to do that. The descendants of the original people that made him band together and melt him down back into mud. Clark is an imperfect son, right? Because the whole goal was like Malivore wanted to like spread his powers and like make more of him that can do what he can, right? Landon, as it turns out, is the perfect son. He is part human. He can live forever and continue the species. Because he has Malivore blood in him, that is why he unlocks the keys that can unlock Malivore. Now the pit is like melted down. We're like going fast. We're fast forwarding into time. Turns out that like Triad, who is like the organization that is overseeing the Malivore pit, they're no longer just dumping monsters into the pit. They are dumping people who they just want to be disappeared into the pit, just like Landon's mom, Selah. Clark was kind of upset at this, but he didn't really know what to do, so he actually just walked right into Malivore and he got forgotten for a little bit. But then Malivore spit him out recently. You may be asking yourself, okay, so now we know that like Malivore was this like sentient golem thing that was consuming things. How does the whole pregnancy thing work? Right? Again, don't ask too many questions. Do not ask too many questions. The show is really not interested in answering that question. They say that all of the humans that Triad had dumped into Malivore gave him enough DNA to like make someone else with a human. It's not really good logic. It's not good lore, and it has horrible optics because where was the consent with Selah? Non-existent. So now Clark tells Landon that Triad wants to chemically alter the pit so it can hurt the protected species of the werewolves, the vampires, and the witches. So then he's like, well, Triad's going to come after school after this. Clark appeals to Landon's like hero complex and need to be wanted and important and says, we can destroy Triad together if you help me. Seemingly, by the end of the episode, Clark and Landon go to find the last key, and Veronica actually comes back and she finds out that Clark has been alive like this whole time and he's like a supernatural being. And they're going to find them. So that's all the Malivore lore that we get this episode, and that's enough of Landon and Clark. Back at the school, remember last episode, Penelope told Josie kind of about the merge. So Josie has all of Alaric's notes about the merge. So Josie is now researching the merge at school, and she pulls all of the books in the library that have the word the merge written somewhere. She opens every book, and every page that mentions the merge is torn out of the book. And so her search like isn't really working. Her and Lizzie are still fighting, and like Lizzie thinks that she could just bake her cookies and everything will be fine, and Josie's like, no, this is like much bigger than that. Remember, Hope is helping Lizzie get Josie back. Hope breaks into Alaric's office and takes a book that he always has locked up, and it's the history of the Gemini Coven, and she gives it to Lizzie so she could give it to Josie, but then Josie doesn't even want it because she's like, I don't want your help. Josie pretty much is like, we need to be our own people. You're suffocating me. Let's have our space. And then Lizzie has a little breakdown. Maybe like 2 hours later, they have another argument, the twins, in their bedroom this time. Lizzie kind of starts to fight back and is like, well, codependency takes two people to tango. Like, you're happy to live in my shadow. Josie's like, I'll just wait for the part where you beg me to forgive you, which is crazy. And then Lizzie actually starts siphoning, because like there's magic flowing through the walls of the school, so like they could really siphon from anywhere. And so Lizzie starts siphoning something. Josie starts siphoning in return, and they have like a little mini battle in their room, and it's like a battle of the wills, and also to see who's stronger. And it turns out Josie is stronger, and Lizzie falls back on the bed. Josie sees that she's kind of hurt her sister, and she's kind of breaking a little bit, and she's like, I'm so sorry. And Lizzie is kind of, it's dawning on her that like, oh, Josie can beat me up. We haven't heard from Raphael in a bit. He is still having some problems after his wolf psychosis, and he's having some side effects from the elixir that Hope gave him. He's losing time. He's being very aggressive, and he actually starts beef with some random vampires in the hallway, and Jed and Roman have to break it up, but not before he throws Alaric across the room. Honestly, I think he deserves it. And then Emma sees all of this happen, and she literally tells Alaric, she's like, you are not equipped to handle this school. Like, these kids are going to get out of control. And Dorian left in episode 12, and so she's like, you need Dorian back, and you're too proud to call him back. And so Emma brings up all of these issues that the school is having, right? What do you think she does? I don't know, like instill herself as headmaster? No. She goes, I'm taking a sabbatical. You could deal with this on your own. Which, like, kind of iconic. She says that she doesn't want to be around when it gets really bad because, like, Alaric is too proud and stubborn, which, yeah, that's true. It is so apparent how ill-equipped Alaric is to handle all of this, especially because he's like the only adult here. As the show goes on, it like the cracks just get even bigger, but he still thinks that he's like the mighty messiah saving all of these supernatural kids from evil, which, okay. To cover up Landon's disappearance, Landon had left Alaric a voicemail. In it, he says, tell Rolf and Jed I say hi. And Hope thinks this is very suspicious because, like, why would he say hi to Jed? And Alaric thinks this is perfectly normal and says to give him some space. Again, Lizzie and Hope are working together. So on Lizzie's side to help Hope, Lizzie gives Hope a therapy prism that allows her to project her subconscious and like talk to it in any form that she wants. So this is also she could practice apologizing to Landon. And it's very funny because like this version of Landon is very biased. Like Hope has some rose-colored glasses on because that's her like boyfriend. The real Landon would never say the things that this Landon says, and it's quite funny. She actually starts fighting with this fake version of Landon. She talks to him again and actually tells the fake him that she loves him for the first time. The first time she tells Landon I love you is to a version of him that is not real. So it turns out this whole time her subconscious has been telling her there is something wrong with the voicemail that Landon left, and that she should listen to it more closely for clues. And so she enlists the help of her ex-boyfriend, Roman, to listen to the voicemail using his vampire hearing, and she deduces that Landon is at Triad and he is in trouble. After the battle between Lizzie and Josie in their bedroom, Hope finds Lizzie and she's going to crash out. And Hope says, okay, I'm going to call my Aunt Freya, who is 1,000 years old. I love Freya, by the way. She's a witch, and she will know what this merge thing is. And so Hope calls Freya off screen, unfortunately, and she finds out about the merge and tells Alaric that, Alaric, you must tell your daughters about the merge or I will tell them. And so Alaric tells the twins about the merge. It's nothing really new. If you've watched the Vampire Diaries, you know about the merge. You may say like, okay, the merge is meant to determine the leader of the Gemini Coven, but there's no coven left. It's only the twins. Like, why do we have to do this? Well, apparently it's a curse on the Gemini twins. They have to do it regardless of if there is a coven to lead. After this heartbreaking conversation, Alaric goes to the bar, kind of to drink, but also to beg Dorian to come back to the school, and he agrees to come back. So Hope is mobilizing a unit to go save Landon, as always. Raphael, of course, his foster brother, wants to go, but Raph still isn't 100% because of the whole wolf psychosis thing. And so Hope gives Raphael this necklace that's made of a special material that allows him to turn himself into a wolf so he can like heal his fractured mind, and it can last as long as it needs to. And once he's ready to be a human again, he just needs to find Hope and she will be able to turn him back. but only Hope. So Super Squad is assembling to go save Landon, and the episode ends with Triad invading the school and knocking down the gate. Oh my God. It's been a long time coming. We're on the last episode. I'd like to thank the Academy. Episode 16, there's always a loophole. The Super Squad consists of Caleb, Jed, the twins, and Hope. Maybe saying, why is Jed coming along? Well, because he is loyal to his alpha, and Raphael cares about Landon. Jed also cares about Landon now. They walk out of the school ready to go to the Malivore pit, and they encounter the Triad goons that are invading the school. So they try to use magic to get them to go away. None of the magic works, and not even Caleb's daylight ring works. So that's not good. Along with Triad, Veronica Greasley has also infiltrated the school, and MG finds out that his mom works for Triad, and his mom wants him to get out of here as quickly as possible. He's like, no, I'm not leaving my friends behind, and he actually tranks his mother. I guess Dorian and Alaric stayed at the bar the whole night because they're trying to come back to the school, and someone has blown up Wickery Bridge. So the reason that Triad is at the school, because they are looking for the third key, which they believe is the chalice. Because this is the picture that Clark left behind when him and Landon went to go find the next key. One of the Triad guys, his name's Burr, he catches Hope and the twins in Alaric's office looking for something. One thing about Burr, he's trigger happy. He has no problem using his gun, shooting children, no problem at all. No moral qualms about it. So the thing is like usually like bullets don't really do anything to them, right? However, he has bullets in his gun that are formed from the Malivore mud. They have weaponized the Malivore pit to be used against the witches, vampires, and werewolves. If you get shot with a Malivore bullet, it kind of infects you from the inside out and you die. So, picture this. Hope, Josie, and Lizzie are lined up. Burr pointing his gun at everybody, going eeny, meeny, miny, mo. And as he's doing eeny, meeny, miny, mo, Lizzie steps up. Josie comes out from behind her and goes right in front of her, and Josie Saltzman gets shot with a Malivore bullet. Josie is shot. After this, the Triad guys lock them up in a cell in the basement, and the twins are arguing over who got shot. I fear there's more pressing things. However, their imprisonment doesn't last for long because MG tranks the guards and he frees them. It turns out Landon was lying about the chalice being the third key. His lies don't really work because apparently he took the third key unconsciously, and this is the third key. I don't really know what this is. I think it's another knife. Clark is like, well, this all went according to plan because I didn't think you were going to tell me the truth, but like you were going to do it anyways, whether you wanted to or not. Clark reveals to Landon that the plan is for Malivore to possess Landon and take over his body and kind of like reproduce using him and like spread the Malivore genes. I don't know. Landon's like, oh my God, why would you want me to activate a key? And Clark's like, well, the monster will come and you just give him the key and he can do all the heavy lifting for us. Like, why are we going to fight all the guards at Triad? Which is pretty smart. What ends up popping up is a headless horseman. Landon has the bright idea to actually hitch a ride with the headless horseman and go to the Malivore pit. Remember how this episode started with the Super Squad wanting to go save Landon, but then it got turned into like an invasion by Triad. So everyone pretty much tells Hope that she can go and rescue Landon while they deal with Triad. Hope's like, okay, I'm gonna go save Landon, but first I'm going to get your guys' magic back. So she finds a fountain in the tunnels under the school, and it turns out that this fountain has been there all along because Alaric put it there. Alaric and Hope meet up in the tunnels, and Alaric knows how to shut it off because this is a contingency plan that he put in place in case the kids at the school got out of hand, and he was able to shut off their magic. And like this was something that he told parents that exists to like assuage their worries about their kids getting out of hand. Also, we find out that when Burr shot Josie, he also shot Hope, but all she has is a bullet hole in her sleeve. She was not hit with the Malivore bullet. It does not affect her, just like the memory erasing does not affect Hope. So now Hope is off to save Landon, and MG and everybody else have to fight back against Triad now that their powers are back. MG yells at everybody using Josie's talisman and says, it's time to fight, guys. There is literally no reason for him to be wearing the talisman because what's the difference between him yelling and like using the talisman? Nothing. He's only telling the people in the room. They can hear him otherwise. It makes no sense. They all fight back against Triad. Everybody's involved, even little Pedro. Obviously, Triad is no match for their powers, and they get absolutely walloped. They load all of the small children onto the bus, including Pedro. Caleb's with them. And of course, who comes but none other then trigger happy triad agent Burr. He is pointing the gun at the children, which is horrible. But Raphael comes and he has used the necklace that Hope has given him and turned into a werewolf. And so Raphael is now a wolf and he drags Burr out of the bus. And now he just has to wait for Hope to get back so she can turn him into a human again. Raphael has taken out Burr, and Nia, who was in the basement and she actually got tranked by MG's mom, she's now awake and she walks out and turns Burr to stone. Great. Caleb comes out because Burr was pointing a gun at Pedro and the rest of the kids, and Caleb is ready to smash Burr's statue. MG stops him, and he pretty much uses Caleb's words against him and says, "You say that we're better, so we must be better." It's very funny because they have Caleb say revolution is messy, which is a Hamilton lyric. They say revolution is messy, but now is the time to stand. Last time we checked on Josie, she got shot. So Josie is now shot in her bed, dying from this Malivore mud bullet. Alaric comes into the room, all slow motion, right? He's rushing in because his daughter is shot. Lizzie is twin cuddling with Josie on the bed. Lizzie sits up, again, all slow motion, and she goes, "Daddy, this is so bad." And I kid you not, that is exactly how Jenny Boyd delivers this line. She goes, "Daddy, this is so bad." You're right, Lizzie. It is bad. Your twin is shot and dying. I would constitute that as a bad situation. Honestly, I've been filming this for hours and I've just been excited to get to this moment because ever since I heard this phrase in 2019, it has entered my vernacular and like infected my vocabulary. I have my friends saying it. I say it to this day. "Daddy, this is so bad." Because sometimes that's all you can describe a situation as. "Daddy, this is so bad." So yes, Lizzie, "Daddy, this is so bad." Alaric is running in because Hope had the bright idea to use her blood, which they have a big supply of because of the werewolf bite cures, to feed Josie her blood. Because when she was shot, she was immune. So she thinks it has something to do with her blood, and Hope is right. Josie drinks Hope's blood and she is healed. Now she's just regular shot. Actually, no, she's not, because Hope's blood also has vampiric healing qualities, and so Josie's fine. And we also find out that during the whole no magic part of the school, while they were sifting through Alaric's office, Josie found a box that was hidden behind a magical mirage of books on a shelf. Her and Lizzie open the box, and we see what we know as the Ascendant. Josie and Lizzie don't really know what it is, but they know that they've seen it before. And this is a tool that was used by the twins and Bonnie Bennett, who is not on this web, but she exists, to lock their uncle, Kai Parker. Remember, Kai Parker, who killed his sister at her wedding. They locked him in a prison world. And a prison world is pretty much like a purgatory where it's like the same day every day. And it's like a mirror of the current world, but he is stuck in there. After the events of today and the invasion of Triad, and actually Alaric not even being present to help its children, Alaric decides that the Honor Council will vote on whether Alaric should remain the headmaster. I guess this is like a fine decision. However, the problem is right now at the school, there are only 2 Honor Council members there, Caleb and Josie. Emma has left. She went on sabbatical. Hope is saving Landon, and Raphael is stuck as a wolf. Who is this Honor Council that is voting? That's my question. Speaking of Hope saving Landon and the Horseman make it to the pit. The Horseman actually throws the key into the pit, but Hope magically suspends it before it hits the mud. Unclear how all of the logistics work in terms of Hope getting there in time and them kind of getting there at the same time. Not going to think about it. So Hope fights the Horseman. She kind of gets her ass kicked for a little bit, and Landon is just yelling fun sci-fi facts at her, but eventually she impales it in the head that it's carrying on its bag, and it dies. Hope and Landon share a nice kiss, and they reunite, and she tells him that she loves him for real this time. It's the real him. He says, "I love you back," obviously, and that he forgives her. I'm looking at it in my notes, and I'm like, why is he saying that she forgives her? I guess for the secrets. But also, he causes her a lot of emotional distress, so he should be apologizing eventually, but he never does. Yay, happy kumbaya. However, Clark is still around. I actually don't know how Clark got there too, because if Landon hitched the ride on the Horseman, how did Clark get there? So Clark is there, and he actually picks up the key off the ground that Hope just like threw somewhere, I guess, and he drops it into the pit. So now the 3rd key has been put into Malivore. So my thing is that literally 2 minutes prior, the Horseman was throwing the thing into the pit and Hope stopped it with her magic. Why could she not do the same thing when Clark did it? You see what I'm saying? Like, she literally just stopped it once. Why couldn't she do it again? I guess you could say she got caught off guard, but also like, she's the Tribridge. She knows what she's doing. Landon gets pissed and uses the Headless Horseman's whip and snaps Clark's neck. Okay, so now the Malivore pit is bubbling. This is not good because all 3 keys have been thrown in. Landon fills Hope in on all of the lore that he learned from Clark. And something that comes up a lot in the Vampire Diaries universe is usually they introduce some immortal being into the world, but there's always a loophole. The rule is that nature always creates a balance. Even though there is an immortal being, there is a weakness. And so Hope pieces it together, but not before she snaps Landon's neck. Obviously, we know that he's going to come back, but I just like putting X's on Landon. I like to just savor this for a little bit. Hope realizes that she must sacrifice herself. She figures out that the triad that created Malivore, the witch, the werewolf, and the vampire, which is exactly the species that Hope is, she figures out that she is the loophole. She's immune to the forgetting, so she still knows who Sayla is. The Malivore bullets don't touch her, so that means she is Malivore's kryptonite. And so she realizes that her purpose in the world is to put down Malivore and stop him from rising. So she calls Alaric and tells him all of this, and she's like, well, actually, you're not going to remember any of this because I'm going to jump into the pit. But she does leave him with instructions, one of them being to go find Landon, and also the other one being to burn all of her stuff. All of the traces of her, the Salvatore school, she wants it to be burned because she doesn't want her friends missing her, because she doesn't know what's going to happen to her when she falls into the pit. She's thinking that she'll die, and then she doesn't want people being like, oh, who's this girl? And then like they try and look for her, and then it turns out she's dead. Technically, I should have put an X on Clark, but like he doesn't even stay dead for that long. So Clark comes back and he wakes up from getting his neck snapped because he's a golem, so like he can't really die. He says that he's not going to try and stop Hope because actually Malivore being dead is good for him. But then Hope does an incredibly cool thing, and she uses a mimic spell on Clark. That way, it forces Clark to fall into the pit with her. Remember, I was talking about all these Buffy copy and paste? Remember when Buffy fell into the Hellmouth in season 5 to save all her friends? That's exactly what Hope does this season. Hope has been erased from memory. Her stuff is being burned, so like there's no trace of her. Problem is, Raphael is a wolf, and he's stuck as a wolf until Hope comes to take him out. I forgot about this. I was thinking to myself, I was like, what is Raphael up to in season 2? And then I had to look, and then I saw that this happened, and I was like, oh shit, that's really bad. Caleb and Josie are getting ready to vote with the Honor Council. Again, Emma's not even here. Raphael's a wolf, but they're waiting for Hope to turn him back. But now they get confused when Hope goes into the pit and they forget that Hope exists. They're like, why do we have 5 voting tiles? There's only 4. We can take this off. Landon wakes back up, unfortunately. Alaric calls him and is like, I have a note that says I need to go get you. Landon looks at the Malivore pit and is like, I don't really know what happened, but the Malivore pit is dry. End of season 1. Who the hell is Hope Michelson? That's the end of Legacies season 1. This video is probably like 3 hours long. I hope it's not, but it probably is very long. If you've stayed to the end, thank you for watching all of this, and I hope you enjoyed it. Honestly, although it took me like forever to like rewatch, script it all out, make this whole wall, and film this video, I did have a lot of fun doing it. If we're looking at like the 5 stages of grief in terms of like my relationship with Legacies, I think I've moved past the anger stage, and now I'm kind of in acceptance that like this has happened, but like I'm going to make use of it and kind of like do something like this and, you know, reminisce a little bit. This is kind of where we're at right now with the show. Honestly, season 2 of Legacies is my favorite. So if you guys do enjoy this recap and want me to recap season 2, I will gladly do it. I think I'll have a lot of fun. If you've watched Legacies, I mourn with you. I hope you had a fun trip down memory lane. If you haven't watched Legacies, I hope you understand something of what happened and how crazy this show was. And honestly, maybe you're kind of seeing the bullet that you dodged. I'm gonna go take a vow of silence now because I've been talking forever and I can feel it in my voice. I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, get some sleep, do not watch Legacies, and I'll see you in the next one.